Okay, so the YouTube live stream is now active as well.
But turn the chat on. Can you see how many people are logged in?
129.
34.
Got 134 from here.
Yeah, so that includes the panelists.
Okay.
I'm expecting a bit more. I mean, I had 160 something emails.
Okay.
Knock off a few for the duplicates.
Certainly there's one that's got a diary clash that I know of.
Yeah, 135. If we're expecting a few more, I'll just give it a couple of minutes because it was slightly late opening up the floodgates.
There were 152 registrants according to Zoom.
Okay. 137. $141 people logged in. Elva owns with this on her keyboard. Okay, it's 10:31. The numbers of people joining is settling down. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the 124th annual meeting of the council. Sadly being held by video conferencing again, but hopefully this is for the last time. I know we're all quite used to this, but it's still not ideal, but we'll make the best of it. As last year and on other meetings like this, if you could use the hand up, raise hand function if you want to say anything. And the way the webinar works is I'll see that and I should see them in order that hands go up. The chat is great for people to chat to each other, but that's not a formal part of the meeting, and I won't necessarily see it if it's going faster than I can see because I've got other things to do. But other panelists may monitor the chat. On the votes, I think, Colin, could we make sure that we record the numbers as well as the percentages? That was a point from last time. And yeah, and so if everybody could stay muted, maybe everyone's muted anyway by the system, but I've locked out all the chats as well. That's my final bit of admin. A particular welcome this morning to Michael Church. Michael Church, elected in 1972 and attending his 50th consecutive meeting, which is a remarkable feat. So particular welcome, Michael. Also welcome to anyone who's not a council member but who's watching the YouTube stream. We do appreciate you taking an interest and hope you can last the distance. Before the opening prayer, news came through to us this morning that Bob Cools, who's president of the Surrey Association, and will be well known to many of you, had a stroke last night, and is in hospital. So our thoughts and prayers will be with Bob as we take the opening prayer, which I'd like to ask John Baldwin to give, please. And we need to have John unmuted.
Yeah, so John should be able to unmute now. There should be a message on his screen.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Remember Bob in our prayers? Can you hear me all right now?
We've got you now. Thank you, Bob. Yeah.
Remember Bob in our prayers. We also remember those who have died since the last meeting, who will be named later in the course of the meeting. But we pray for ourselves as members of the council, using a prayer of St. Richard of Chichester. Thanks be to you, our Lord Jesus Christ, for all the benefits which you have given us, for all the pains and insults which you have borne for us. Most merciful Redeemer, friend and brother, may we know you more clearly, love you more dearly, and follow you more nearly, day by day. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, John. Item 2, applications to affiliate. There are none to date. Is that correct, Mary?
Yep.
Thank you. Item 3 then is welcome to new members. There's a list on page 6 of your booklet. You can see the new members have an asterisk and returning members have a hash. There are quite a few, so welcome to all of them. A few changes to mention since publication. David Bleeby fills the ANZAB vacancy. Elva Ainsworth replaces Bob Cater for the Yorkshire Association. Both David and Elva are returning members. Anthony Ellis is a returning member filling a Hereford vacancy. Is that all, Mary?
Yep.
Yep. The number of vacancies has gone down, which is a positive, coming at a time as it is when we're discussing making the council smaller, but it's good to see vacancies being filled and people being interested in the work of the council. Item 4, apologies for absence. Mary.
Right, thank you, President. Right, I've received apologies from David Kelly, Fellow, Ian Oram, ex officio, and Ian's a steward of the Fred E. Dukes International Bell Fund. Tim Jackson, ex officio member, a steward of the Dove database. Chris Ridley, ex officio, historical and archive workgroup leader. Chris has urgent family affairs. Mark Regan, ex officio, senior stakeholder liaison workgroup leader. Tim Jones of the Devon Association. Helen Bridgman of the Essex Association. The new bishop is being seated today. Mark Davies of the Gloucester and Bristol Diocesan Association. Doug Davis, Kent County Association. John Lovelace, Society of Royal Cumberland Youths. Stephen Petman, Suffolk Guild. Noel Gibbon, Surrey Association. Noel may be joining us a bit later. Chris Tennant and Catherine Cox of the Worcestershire and Districts Association.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies for absence? Nope. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 5, which is remembering those who've passed away. Mary, if you've got a list, please.
Right, thank you, President. Right, we remember Ivor Robert Nichols. He represented the Chester Diocesan Guild from 1980 to 83 and attended 3 meetings. Ivor died on the 5th of September 2020. David Kingman died in September 2020. He represented the Peterborough Diocesan Guild from 2002 to 6 and attended 4 meetings. Colin Alfred Tester represented the Kent County Association 1969 to 72. He attended 2 meetings and died on the 21st of November 2020. George Stedman Dees represented the Durham and Newcastle Diocesan Association 1981 to 84. George died on the 14th of January 2021. Ronald Ducker represented the Beverley and District Society 1967 to 1972. He attended 5 meetings and died on the 19th of January. Jennifer Margaret Bunyan, known to all of us as Jay, represented the Bath and Wells Diocesan Association from 2005 until her death in this year. Jay attended 16 meetings and died on the 14th of March. Philip George Morgan represented the Hereford Diocesan Guild from 1964 to 65. He attended 1 meeting and died on the 17th of March. Alan Frederick Ellis, North American Guild 99 to 2008, Honorary Member 2008 to 2010, Additional Member 2010 to 2011, and North American Guild again 2014 to 2019. Alan attended 17 meetings and died on the 7th of April. William Henry Dowse represented the National Police Guild from 2011 to 2014, and again later in 2014 to 2018. He attended 5 meetings and died on the 12th of June. Alan Michael Barber represented the Ely Diocesan Association from 1971 to 1978. He attended 7 meetings and died on the 12th of July. Arthur Terence Collins represented the Winchester and Portsmouth Diocesan Guild from 1987 to 1993. He attended 6 meetings and died on the 30th of July. Michael Thomas Sprackling represented the London County Association from 1987 to 1993. He attended 6 meetings and died on the 26th of August.
Thank you, Mary. We'll have a period of silence now while we remember those members who've died. Thank you. Move on to item 6, which is the minutes of the 2020 annual meeting, which you'll find on pages 7 to 12 of your meeting papers. Are there any corrections on the accuracy of the minutes, please? Could we have someone just put their hand up as a test on the chat, on the putting your hand up, just to check this? Thank you, Jane. Okay, yep. Thank you very much. Yes, okay. Just wanted to check that was working. Okay. No comments on the accuracy. In that case, can I have a proposer that we accept the minutes as a true record? Alan Yolden has put his hand up. And, okay, thank you, Alan. Is there a seconder, please? Top of the list is Alison Williams. So can we have the vote, please, that the minutes of the 2020 AGM are accepted as a true record? David Katz has got his hand up. David?
I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Forget
Okay,
mine.
not a problem. Okay, just leave the vote up for a few more seconds, please. Okay, can we take the result, please? Okay, 124 votes, 6 abstentions. Thank you very much. Let's close that. A couple of points I want to make before we move on to the substantive part of the meeting. First of all, can I remind speakers to give your first name and surname when speaking, and the name of the society you represent. The meeting is being streamed live to the internet, as we've said, and it's also being recorded in order to assist with writing the minutes afterwards. And also, please remember that we're all volunteers. Some of us have got day jobs as well as doing this, so bear that in mind when making points you want to make. Secondly, members with financial or business interests in bell-related trades, and that should be interpreted quite widely, must declare any relevant interests in any proceedings. And finally, right at the end of last year's minutes, there was the Secretary reminding members of the rule about formal notification of membership numbers and payment of fees 6 weeks before the meeting. Otherwise, the sanction is that members won't be able to speak or vote. Now, we did get all affiliation fees in. Unfortunately, 3 societies failed to get their membership numbers in time. Whether that was a fault of the processes on either side isn't completely clear. But what is clear is that there wasn't any sort of malice or forethought in that failure. And numbers were received in between the deadline and now. So in the interests of fairness, I don't think this is the most heinous of crimes. This is a charity and we're all volunteers. So I'd like, with your consent, to allow members present to participate fully. As all fees have been received and membership numbers have been confirmed. So if anyone objects to that course of action, please raise your hand and we'll vote on it. But hopefully we'll accept that everybody here can take part. I've got Fred Bone hand up.
Fred should be able to unmute.
Yes, Mr. President. Fred Bone, Essex Association. You know, the rules are quite clear. We passed them 3 years ago. Everybody knows what they are. The Secretary has reminded everybody at every meeting, including well before that these rules exist. And if people don't, you know, if the consequence of people flouting the rules and if the consequence of people flouting the rules is that they are told that the rules are going to be ignored, then we might as well not have them.
Hand up from Tina Stocklin.
Tina should be able to unmute now.
Tina Stocklin, Scottish Association. I just want to disagree because this is the first year this rule has come into effect, if I'm understanding this correctly. And I think we should be generous in this first year to allow for any errors in process. I mean, we certainly at the Scottish Association had a little bit of confusion where our submission was mislaid temporarily, which was sorted out, but we don't know that maybe that didn't happen to other people as well. So, I mean, I think that leniency in the first year while we sort out any little sort of niggles seems to be reasonable, and we can be strict in following years.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other comments? Otherwise, I'll put it to the vote. No. The vote, Colin, if you can get the vote ready, the vote will be that all representative members present may speak and vote.
Okay, if you could just give me 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. We will look to make the process a little bit easier and a little bit clearer, irrespective of the result of this vote. Oh, hand up from David Bleeby.
David, you should be able to unmute now.
Sorry, I think that was the wrong button. So I'm
Okay,
sorry.
not to worry. Vote's not ready yet. The vote will appear on screen any moment now.
Okay, I'm about to launch the
Okay.
vote, Mr. President.
Thank you. That all members present can speak and vote. I'll give it 10 seconds or so. Another 5 seconds. Thank you, Colin. Can we have the result of that vote? 88% in favour, 8% against, and 4% abstained. Can we also make sure the numbers are recorded there? Or maybe you can't. Okay. But thank you very much for that. The societies in question, representatives, are free to speak if they want to. Item 7, matters arising from the minutes not covered elsewhere on the agenda. I don't think there are any matters that aren't going to be discussed in work group reports or elsewhere. I'm going to cover the results of the consultations at the end of the forward plan. With that in mind, are there any other matters arising, do we think? Otherwise, certainly feel free to question items as work group reports come up or when I speak later. Now, in that case, we move on to item 8, which is the annual trustees report for 2020. This can be found on page 13. This is the formal part of the report to the Charities Commission, more legal in structure and content than the other reports. It was approved by the trustees on 15th of May. Mary, I believe you've got an update to section 7 on membership.
Yes, thank you, President. I do, because the memberships are sort of work in progress the whole time now. So I'm not going to go through all the changes. There are 4 fellows, that's still the same. There are 14 ex officio members, and there were changes amongst the latter. Andy Smith, as we know, retired at the conclusion of last year's meeting as treasurer and an ex officio member. And in the autumn, Fergus, our new treasurer, chose to become an ex officio member. Louise Nightingale, as workgroup leader for communications and marketing, also resigned last autumn. Paul Jopp became an ex officio member upon his appointment as chairman of the Ringing World Limited. And the number of 14 includes Bill Purvis, as he's yet to be replaced as a steward of the Carter Ringing Machines collection. There are still 66 affiliated societies, and there's one change in society membership entitlements due to a change in their membership numbers. The Australian and New Zealand Association is currently only entitled to 3 members. There are 181 representative members out of a potential total of 198. And I'll briefly mention just a couple of those who've retired. Ken Davenport of the Oxford Diocesan Guild had been a member since 1996. And Christopher Omani of ANZAB was, of course, vice president 2014 to 2017 and president 2017 to 2019. And as Simon mentioned earlier, a number of vacancies have been filled, and there are now only 17 vacancies. This is still a high number, but last year at this time there were 29, so it is a great improvement. Thank you very much. And please encourage all your members, while under the current system, to fill these vacancies. As we've said before, indeed every year since the new rules came in, this executive wishes to be held to account, and we want members who'll participate fully and contribute to the council's strategic direction and work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions on the trustees report? No. In that case, I'd like to propose that the annual trustees report be received and adopted. Is there a seconder, please? Neil Dodge, closely followed by Rob Lane. Neil Dodge is seconded. Could we have the vote on screen, please? That we receive and adopt the trustees report for 2020. I'll give it 15 seconds. Five seconds left. Thank you very much. Can we have the result of that vote, please, Colin? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to the accounts for 2020, which can be found on pages 16 and 17 of your meeting papers. The Treasurer, Fergus Tracy, is available to take questions. I don't know if Fergus, if you want to say anything or just take questions, I'll certainly pass over to you and have a little sip of tea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of notes of thanks to Andy Smith for enabling a smooth transition to myself and his assistance for all of this. The independent examiner has issued an unqualified report, and the accounts were approved by the trustees on the 15th of May this year. I'd like to thank the independent examiner, Caroline Stockman, for her work. Thanks also go to Beryl Norris of Publications and Ian Self of the Library for their contributions. The total assets of the council as at 31st of December 2020 were £457,812. The general fund made a surplus of 4,054, and this was primarily due to the AGM being held virtually. Publications made a loss of £2,163 due to the pandemic reducing sales. And the library also had a deficit of £1,749. There was one grant from the awards from the Fred Dukes Fund, which was paid, and 8 grants paid from the Central Council Bell Fund on completion of work. And as a charity, we benefit from Microsoft not charging for approximately the first £2,700 of hosting costs for the website. If this changes, it will make a difference to ourselves. And again, there's no proposal for variation of the current affiliation fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Fergus. Are there any questions on the accounts which we'll endeavour to answer between Fergus or others? First hand up is Robert Perry.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Morning from Cornwall. Robert Perry, Truro, Dorset and Guild. I'm not sure if this is the right place to raise it, but it's referred to in the report, so I'll mention it now, and that is to thank the Central Council on behalf of the ringers at Kenwyn, Truro, for the grant which we've received from the Bell Funds. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Noted. Thank you, Robert. Any other questions on the accounts? Robert, your hand is still up. Presumably you don't actually want to ask another question. Nope, no, it's gone. Okay. If there are no questions on the accounts, then we'll put that to the vote, and the vote is that they are received and adopted. Colin, could we have the vote up on screen, please? Give this 15 seconds. Five seconds left. Okay, thank you. Can we have the result of that, please? Percentages and numbers, 100% in favour of adopting the accounts. Thank you very much. And let's thank virtual voted thanks to Fergus, who's taken over the accounts role very well. We appreciate his hard work on it. Thank you very much, Fergus. We move on to item 10, which is the annual report of the executive and work groups for 2020 through to May 2021. And as you'll see, item 11 on the agenda paper is updates from May to August. Now, when we get to the updates, that will be on-screen presentation, and the various work group leaders will either speak to an update, or their deputies will do it for them. So we can take questions on the reports in this item, or you can wait until the updates in the next section when the work group leaders will be speaking anyway. Might work a little bit better if we do it that way, but it's up to you. So and of course the executive report I will be presenting in item 12, and you may want to leave questions for more executive items until then, but again, it's up to you. Otherwise, we'll take questions in the order that they're in the meeting papers. First of all, the executive report itself. Are there any questions on the executive report? There aren't. Then what comes after the executive report is the various, what we call now the support group. So there's a report from, hand up from John Harrison. John, please.
This is not so much a question as a comment. I think it's an excellent achievement that the council's got to the point where it can now say that we are considered as the first place to consult for anything to do with ringing. In former years, we had a lot of frustration when the church and other bodies would make decisions and announce things about ringing, which we only discovered about afterwards. I think the executives be congratulated on getting more to the point where we are recognised as the first place to talk. And I hope that that will spread from the church to other bodies as well.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. It's appreciated, that comment. So following on from the executive report, there is performance analysis. Any questions for Phil Barnes and Richard Alton? I think particularly noteworthy, a question from Tina Stocklin.
Sorry, I'm quite happy for you to have your noteworthy comment first, Simon, if you would prefer.
The noteworthy comment was only to say, to draw your attention particularly to the inclusion now of court appeal analysis. We felt that it's very important to give court appeal analysis at least as much, if not more, recognition as appeals. There's far more to be learned, I think, from analysing court appeals about grassroots ringing than there is to learn from studying how many appeals different associations have and Bellboard and the tools around Bellboard have made it easier for us to do that. So just wanted to draw attention to that analysis. Sorry, Tina.
Thank you. Tina Stecklin, Scottish Association. Can I just concur with that? I think the inclusion of court appeals is well overdue and is excellent to see. So well done to the committee for taking that on as well. I'm slightly wearing my hat as a member of the Women in Ringing Working Group last year, and wondering, this is a very unusual year, but I would like to ask the committee if they would start including a gender analysis in future reports. So that we can track where we are. We've laid down a benchmark, the working group, that was using Bellboard data with some normalization and running it and cross-checking it against some other things. And I'm sure members of the work group can offer some help in constructing whatever needs for the analysis. I'm done.
Yes, thank you, Tina. Phil, I don't know if you want to come back on that. It seems a fairly straightforward request.
Thank you. Philip Barnes, Central Council Trustee and Kent County Association. I would really appreciate the opportunity to do that. We will need a little bit of help, not only from the Women in Ringing group for some of their advice on the normalisation and so on that they did before, but also a bit of a plea to all of those who submit performances. One of the issues that we have when trying to do anything with ringers of all genders is to make sure that we're counting people once, and the number of names that you can divine, for example, from the Peels analysis, is usually reduced by about 5 or 10% when you cut out their Oxbridge colleges, their Freemason affiliations, let alone the variations in spelling people's names, my own included. So a little bit of help with that. And I'm also aware that there are some really clever ways of trying to do things with ringer IDs, but that's probably going to need to be a work in progress. But there's work we can build on from the academic world in allowing people to grab their own performances. So there's a lot we can do, and if anyone wants to be involved in that, please let me know.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on performance analysis while Phil is sort of got the stage? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, so the next item there is a publication, and then Bell Safeguarding and the Bell Restoration Fund Grants Panel. Questions for any of those? I know there are representatives of those groups available if there are any questions on those, which there aren't. In that case, before we move on to the updates, we do vote. Oh, sorry, no, Simon Dixon, hand up.
Simon Dixon, Peterborough Guild. This is the second year there have been no new publications from the Publications Committee. Are there any plans for the future? I know that several books have been published elsewhere.
Yes, I can. Well, I can start off answering that one, and if anyone from the Publications team wants to come back to me. We have struggled to have meetings with the Publications team during lockdown, to be fair. At a meeting we had recently, we discussed a project which is to for a series of small books. I liken them to the Ladybird series, which some of you may remember. Books on single short topics that are relatively inexpensive, rather than a big book that might cost you £20. Small books that cost £1.50 but just cover one subject. So there is keenness to get books published again, and also the team is looking at titles that need a refresh, because there are some that haven't been looked at for quite a while, and could do with a rewrite. Someone rather cheekily suggested judging striking competitions should be rewritten, but I think they were. I thought that's quite good. But yes, so there is appetite. I just want to mention now. I was going to mention later, but the one thing has just been produced, which is a publication of sorts, but has been done in a different way, and that's the ebook called Calling It Round, which has been written by Bryn Marie Reinstadler in North America, and is aimed at introducing calling and conducting. And rather than this being a printed work, although it can be adapted so that it is printable, it's an online publication, and very interactive. Neil Dodge has kindly put a link to it in the chat if you want to have a look at that and distribute that. But that's it really is, I think very good, and a different way of presenting information. And a number of the work groups are looking at ways of using that format to producing. We recognise, of course, there is still a market for the printed work, and a channel for the printed work through association bookstalls, etc. But this is broadening the way in which we can deliver information to ringers. Okay. With that, then, if there are no other comments, I'll put. Could we have the vote? The vote. I'd like to propose that we adopt the annual report of the executive and work groups. Is there a seconder, please? Nick Elks, second that. That was fastest. Can we have the vote up on screen then, please, Colin? Unless Mike Hansford, your question was a question rather than a seconding. I'll just check that before. He's gone. Okay. In that case, 15 seconds on the vote to receive and adopt the executive and work group reports for 2020. A few more seconds. Okay, can we have the result of that, please? Thank you very much. Those were adopted. And we move on to item 11, which is the executive and work group updates for May to August. But although this might seem like overkill, given that there is a lot of information in the meeting papers, I have asked the work group leaders to bring us up to date, especially as we've been getting going with ringing again. So quite a bit has happened in the last 4 or 5 months, and I also feel that this is an important part of this meeting is hearing about what work groups are doing, because it affects all of us, hopefully. So I'd like to let each of the work group leaders have 4 or 5 minutes on the stage and present what they've been doing and what they're going to be doing, and probably at the end of each one ask for help. So this will be in the form of a PowerPoint presentation, which will appear on the screen, and I think the first one up is Vicky Chapman. So Vicky, if you're ready, please kick us off.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everybody. Vicky Chapman, Public Relations Officer, PR Work Group Lead and Rep for Essex. So the Public Relations Work Group is a reasonably new work group set up from the disbanded Comms and Marketing Group. The work of that group was split between us and V&L. So our terms of reference are on page 26 of the meeting paper, so I don't propose to read them verbatim. But in summary, we are here to help promote the work of the council and bell ringing to general public using different media and the various communication channels, to create opportunities for public awareness about ringing and what we can do and how we can support national events and international events, to respond to media queries, and we get quite a lot of those at certain times of the year and when certain events happen, and to offer associations, individuals, towers, whoever, guidance on public relations matters. So next slide, please, Colin. Thank you. So we were set up in April this year, but we've been quite busy so far, not helped by almost immediately the unfortunate death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. We supported confirmation of what ringing should take place and when. There was a lot of regional coverage, particularly of tolling in some areas, and I did, and other people did, various interviews both with national press and regional radio. We learnt a lot of that from that experience, and as such we are updating our London Bridge guidance. London Bridge is the protocol for when Her Majesty the Queen passes. We have had discussions with Lambeth Palace and been in contact with Buckingham Palace. We're just waiting for final confirmation now of a few final points from Lambeth Palace, and that guidance will be issued to associations to cascade down to membership. It will be issued to diocesan comms offices about this is what bell ringers are going to do, and obviously updated on our website. At the time of that event, you will see a comms plan kick in, which will include information and splash pages on our website and social media. The 200th anniversary of Ellicott Chimes was in June this year, and through the pandemic, Ellicott Chimes mechanisms have really come into their own and have been an ideal way to keep bells ringing for various events when only one person's needed to use them. We coincided this with a recording of the Ellicott at Bitton for the Bells on Sunday BBC Radio 4 segment. International friends from the US, Bruce and Eileen Butler, wrote an article for the Ringing World celebrating US Independence Day. And again, that coincided with a recording of Bells on Sunday from Washington Cathedral. It's great to have some international flavour for a change. In May this year, we launched a photo competition in support of the collation of images for press and media and others to use. We quite often get asked if we got some pictures we can use for an article in a newspaper or magazine. So we're helping build a repository of that. The first category opened in May, and that was about ringing through the seasons. And the winner of that category was a picture of Dunblane Cathedral taken by Chris Fry. The second category that followed was about bells and installations, and the winner of that category was the Bells of Up Holland by Phil Hope. You can see both of those images just in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So the third category is currently open, and this is about bells in art. Now, what we mean by that is bells that are depicted in some way, so in stained glass, in carvings, in needlework, in paintings, or however, that's not an actual physical bell, but how bells are pictured in other means. And the closing date for that is the 8th of October, so please go look at the Central Council website for how you can participate in that. And I'd just like to say thank you to the judges for the first two categories and to everyone who has uploaded photographs so far. We've got some really good images there now that people can use. In July, we had the NHS Social Care and Frontline Workers Day. This was another brainchild of Bruno Peaks, he of the Pipers and Beacons. He's hoping to make this an annual event to thank the NHS, particularly obviously this last year or so, those that have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic to keep everyone safe and to remember those who lost their lives. And ringing took place at 8 p.m. and performances were linked with the Bellboard event. We've already mentioned a couple of times, but working closely with Philip Orme, who organises the recordings for BBC Radio 4's Bells on Sunday. Since joining our group, Philip's had some really great ideas to link in with, such as the Ellicott Chimes, US Independence Day, and there's a few more coming up. And towards the end of the year, we're going to be sharing details about how you can make a really great recording of your bells and submit it for Bells on Sunday. And it's really good if you've got a particular anniversary or special event you can link that in with. But do bear in mind the timescales. They tend to operate a couple of months ahead of schedule. So next slide, please, Colin. Thank you. So we've got a lot of things coming up that we're beavering away in the background. So more Bells on Sunday. So as I said, we'll issue details of that soon. Heritage Open Days runs from the 10th to the 19th of September. This is an opportunity to engage, recruit, and details are on the council's website. This year's theme is Edible England, and we all know ringers love a good ringer's tea and a bit of cake. So good opportunity to have your bells there. Bell Sunday, not to be confused with Bells on Sunday, is an idea that we had about having one day of the year, one Sunday of the year, where a church service is dedicated to all things bells and bell ringing. And this could be hymns or readings or performances during the service, with ringers taking part, reading the lessons, providing refreshments, and then maybe having the tower open afterwards for have-a-go sessions and whatnot, so that the church really gets a feel for the value that ringers put into the life of the church. And we've been starting to liaise with the Guild of Clerical Ringers to support this. They are in favour of supporting that, and obviously it'd be great if we can turn that into an international event. We're also thinking about having a PR Matters Day 2.0. Some of you may remember a few years ago, there was a workshop for public relations minded people. So the idea is to have another one of those so we can share ideas, get inspiration and practical support on promoting ringing in your area. This is like in the super early stages of formation at the moment. It's like literally that's, you know, it's a title, it doesn't have any meat to it at the moment, but something to come. We're looking at our materials and guidance information that are available on the website, what's on offer, and how we can support you in your PR campaigns for your recruitment and fundraising activities. And this is about making sure that there's contemporary and appropriate leaflets and posters and banners, And we're also going to look at having a presentation that you can use, and you can top and tail it with your own information, and with photographs and links to videos that can help support a presentation that you might give to anybody. Then next year, of course, we've got the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. We're liaising with the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sports to promote ringing during the extended bank holiday here in the UK, with especially linking to Friday the 3rd of June, when there is a service of Thanksgiving for the Queen's reign that will be held at St Paul's Cathedral. So we would like to suggest that ring is coordinated on that day, although I'm sure there'll be lots of ringing throughout that whole weekend. So look out for further information on that one. We piloted, test run a discussion forum, which is an area that will be available to anyone to link into to discuss, share ideas, ask questions or ask for advice and support. I believe one of the other work groups might have some other information on that, but as soon as it's launched, we'll be encouraging people to join us and have those discussions. COP26, this is the climate change talks in Glasgow in November. The council's policy on ringing for political events is quite clear. What's not clear is whether something around climate change is political or not. The conference itself is a political conference, which obviously meant that we wouldn't necessarily be promoting ringing particularly. But over the last week or so, there's been a bit of traction around obviously climate change not being a political issue, and people have strong feelings. And you will have also seen that there's been a poster doing the rounds from churches encouraging people to ring at 6 p.m. on the 30th of October, just before the conference starts. Again, it's one of those things that you decide on at a local thing. If you want to, and you have permission from the church authorities to do so, then there is a link on the Bellboard events page. And then lastly, Save Our Parish. Again, I think one of the other work group leaders will talk a bit more about this, but this is our opportunity to engage with issues concerning the closure of churches and how bell ringing and bell ringers can help keep churches open and help keep them as vibrant parts of local community. So more details on that to follow. So next slide, please, Colin. Thank you. Lots of words on this. Basically, it's a list of names. So this is who we are. This is the current work group members. And you can see from that list that we've got a reasonable geographic spread, but it would be really great to get some other people involved from other parts of the UK, particularly North and in Wales, but also other areas overseas as well, so we can truly promote international ringing. Might make trying to organise a Zoom meeting logistically fun, but you know, I'm up for a challenge. Things that I've mentioned that we might need help with particularly are around crafting articles, event organising, particularly if we're going to look at another workshop day. And then if you've got general ideas for promoting ringing, whatever, always happy to hear from you, always happy to hear about what worked well in your areas. But also if you've got some good news stories from your local area, then let us know so that we can share them with other people. So I would be really happy to hear from anyone who wants to come and join us, whether it's for a short period of time or to help us with some of those events. That'd be great. The contact details are there, pro@cccbr.org.uk. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Are there any questions for Vicky? No hands have gone up. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to Senior Stakeholder Liaison. I'm covering for Mark in his rather embarrassing diary malfunction. So if we move through quickly, please. The top one, you'll be pleased to know, as I say in the forward plan, this activity is largely winding down. But Mark has weekly discussions with Mark Betson, Reverend Mark Betson, who is going back to his role as the Church of England's rural officer. I think probably a potential high flyer. So he's certainly being very helpful in building connections with other senior clergy and diocesan secretaries, and he's very good at opening doors for us. So it's a very good relationship that's been built there. The relationship with David Knight at the Church Buildings Council is paying dividends. that was the catalyst for getting the agreement to bring the CBC's separate bell database into Dove. Also pleased Historic England, where we know Diana Evans, who heads up Cathedrals and Churches Group, very well. Getting an audience at the September annual DAC conference, I think is a bit of a coup. Mark and I have a whole half-hour slot to talk about bells and bell ringing at that event. Next slide. This liaison role is proving useful, and just in case you think that the work group is straying beyond its remit, it opens doors. Basically, it's opening doors for other work groups. Those first three are all covered in the report, except the last one, which is a more recent addition to the potential addition to Alison Hodges' work group on developing expertise in measuring structural engineering and measuring movement of towers, where we're pulling together a number of strands of expertise to replace people who are retiring from this skill. The next slide, please. The point about UNESCO is covered in the report, so I won't talk about that again. The Save the Parish campaign, though, this was covered well in last week's Ringing World. The campaign has had a lot of media profile, but it's quite a tricky one for bell ringers to navigate. It comes across as being a little bit church political. We have now pulled together everything we know about Save the Parish onto a page on the website. It's under bells and bell ringing, and then the drop down as a Save the Parish tab, which you'll be able to see, and it pulls together some comment from us, and everything that's been published so far, the original documents and the coverage in the press, because this has been well covered in the press. While the Save the Parish campaign basically wanted to stop this consultation paper, GS 2222, there's a lot of good stuff in it. Yesterday, Mark and I had an hour with James Morgan from the DNN, who's a diocesan secretary and PCC member, as well as a bell ringer. So he is very, very useful. I mean, he said everybody wants to save the parish, but the Save the Parish campaign people don't really have any idea about how to do it. So, however, this is all connected with the acceleration of church closures and making the process easier. And the best thing for us to do is to get close to our incumbents and PCCs, which will at least get early warning if a church is at risk. Robert, I've seen your hand. I'll come to you in a moment. Our suggestion is that every guild and association, every district or branch starts a risk register of towers in their area. We could define those as sort of green, amber or red levels of risk. For instance, if your church has a congregation of fewer than 20, it's already amber. Then we could take all the reds and put them on the agenda for our annual meeting with the Church Buildings Council and Historic England, and make sure that good rings of bells, particularly, are discussed at an early stage. All those groups recognise that it's far easier to get bells out of towers and rehomed before the church is formally closed, and it becomes extremely difficult later on in the process. So the stuff there to be read, and it's a consultation to be responded to. So that's all I'm going to say. There were a couple of hands have gone up, the first of which is Robert Perry and then Alan Nunley.
Yes, thank you, Robert Perry Truro. I just wanted to say that Save the Parish as a campaign is, in church terms, quite political, very political. And some of you may be aware that the General Synod of the Church of England is about to be re-elected. And I know that Save the Parish is hoping to field candidates for election who will, I assume, support their particular approach to this. There are other approaches, and if you've seen this week's Ringing World, which thankfully arrived yesterday on my doormat anyway, there is a letter in there which does make very useful comments about the fact that Save the Parish, that there are other aspects which Save the Parish as a campaign appear to be ignoring, or at least not giving any guidance on. So given that we have a policy of avoiding political issues, I think we ought to extend that or exercise some caution over the next month or so while the elections are underway, in order to avoid appearing to support one viewpoint, as opposed to taking a broader look, which we can perhaps do once the elections are out of the way. We know who we're dealing with in the terms of the next General Synod.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Robert. We after a little bit of initial excitement when we spoke to the Save the Parish people, we pulled back from it quite considerably. I think that our comments have been quite measured. But yes, there's good stuff in there. It is quite political, and the best thing I think ringers can do is be close to our incumbents and PCCs, and find out what it's a good excuse to speak to our incumbents and find out what they think about all this. But yes, it's a good point, Morgan. Alan Nunley from North America.
Yeah, Alan Nunley, North American Guild. Can you hear me?
Yes, got you.
Great. So the Save the Parish campaign looks interesting. I will look on the website and respond if I can. But I was curious as to how this was thought to, that it might work outside the UK, outside C of E. Save the Parish campaign.
To be honest, I think this is a C of E thing. I don't think it has an impact anywhere else.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that report? No? Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to Stewardship and Management. Alison Hodge.
Good morning, everybody.
Alison
Hodge, the Worcestershire and Districts Change Ringing Association. I've been hauled over the coals for not giving the full title of the association in the past. So thank you very much indeed. First of all, giving you the update on the key things that we've been doing during the last few months. I ought to acknowledge that a lot of what we do is actually going on in the background all the time, where work group members and also some specialist advisors who help us in the background respond to individual inquiries from ringers and parishes regarding the sort of topics that we work on in our work group. So that's a lot of the meat and drink of what we do. Doesn't get much visibility, but is important. And so I thank the work group members and the specialists for all that they do with that and everything else that they do, before I forget to do so, because their contributions are much appreciated. So thank you to everybody involved. So first of all, on this slide, the Westley Award. This is for people who are relatively new to starting work on improvements and maintenance in church towers, to encourage more people to do this sort of thing. This is the third time that the Westley Group have sponsored this, and we are very, very pleased that this year the winner was a young man aged 17 who is already done several years of work on bell towers under tuition from others and already helping others to get into this sort of activity, principally around the southeast of England where he is currently based. So well done to Oliver Watson, and thank you again to Tom Westley and his company for sponsoring that. This has already been touched on. We are very concerned that the number of people who have structural engineering expertise to do work on bell towers and bell installations. Normally they have to also be conservation accredited, because of course the towers that they're working on are of such an age that that is a requirement. So we are working hard to identify particularly bell ringers and people who have knowledge of bells and ringing, who are also accredited structural engineers with professional indemnity that is current. We have a few people who can help us who are now retired, but unfortunately they don't normally have the professional indemnity to back their work if any troubles did arise, which hopefully they wouldn't. So we are looking for more people. We have identified 1 or 2 companies and people involved in this sort of thing, and we are trying to build up that sort of expertise. We've also continued with work by one key individual on some fundamental maths and physics of tower movement and the influence of bells on towers and towers on bells, the go of bells. And we are in the process of buying some equipment through the council to actually go and do some tests in towers to test that out, and hopefully to support the previous points about more people able to do this sort of thing in real towers as part of restoration and installation projects. The other thing that we've been doing for quite a while is updating all the guidance and advice that's been on the Central Council website for many, many years. And as Simon has indicated earlier on, we are moving from it all being on paper-based material to being online. And we've got demonstration sections now produced for online presentation, and hopefully they will be on the website in the not too distant future. And more sections will be added in due course. And the first approach that we're taking is updating and extending the manual of belfry maintenance, which is in paper form at the moment, so that becomes available in the web-based format. People can use their devices to look at it, but also hopefully still print if they want to have a copy on paper and get grubby and drop it in the bell tower without anything coming amiss. So if we move on to the next slide then, please. So as I've already said, we are continuing to revise and update the manual of belfry maintenance. We are also updating the document that was called Organising a Bell Restoration Project, which is prepared many years ago and is now really out of date in many respects of detail, but actually still contains some substantially relevant information. And we're also producing a complete new set of guidance on how to run a tower. All the things like tackling GDPR, insurance, risk assessment, safeguarding and the like. Hopefully a new compendium that will help tower captains and steeple keepers on how to run towers. As I've mentioned, we want to do more work on practical trials of tower movement. And as I believe one of my colleagues will mention shortly, we are setting up networks, or I think they're called fora, for people who are doing various aspects of work in towers, which are of interest to our group, and other things of relevance to ringers as well. We hope that this will be a good repository for information where people can answer questions as well as ask questions in communities with common interest, or where people want to find knowledge more informally. And then the other thing that we want to prepare, and this will probably be with the comms group, PR group, sorry, is some talks for ringers and non-ringers, which will be in various formats, including videos and presentation material and webinars, so that ringers can actually inspire and elucidate for new ringers perhaps, and also for non-ringers, what goes on upstairs, how it works, and giving examples, and perhaps helps for demonstrations and the like. So that's on that slide, and on to the next one. Having said what we're planning to do, we are looking for some more support in the work group. Our secretary, Robin Shipp, is doing a fantastic job on pulling together some of these documents that we're preparing and helping people get them onto the website. So we want someone to assist him with the more routine activities of the work group. For video compilation and events, we need people to help on that, please. And one of the things that we're missing for people helping on bell restoration projects is how to engage with local communities. We're sure that there are a lot of people who've done this sort of thing, and often we're told that they've fallen into the traps and pitfalls. So we're wanting someone who can offer advice and guidance on that. As ever, we're wanting people who've got professional insights into the rules and regs on grants and VAT and gift aid and all the money matters that come across in ringing. We've got some people who advise on this, but perhaps some people with current regulation, current knowledge would be helpful for us as well. And then the other thing that comes up quite a lot is where people have got experience of running PCCs, how PCs operate, and perhaps people who've got experience of running the faculty systems, which are online now. We'd welcome someone with that sort of expertise to come and join the work group who can offer advice to ringers through their PCCs on this sort of thing. So I think that completes my slide set. If anyone wants more information, then they can contact me. The details are on this slide if it's visible, but also you should be able to find me on the website from the Central Council anyway. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Alison. Any questions for Alison? Philip Green, then Peter Harrison.
That's a great deal of work that Alison and the group are doing, and it's to be commended. I would like to say that the pieces of work that Alison's talked about, bell restoration, manual bell maintenance, running a tower, whilst it's great they're online, there is still a big appetite for the printed book, and it would be very reassuring if Alison could say whether these publications will be put out for print by the publications group.
Hello, Philip. Thank you for that. Obviously, you've got a great interest in that, and we have discussed it in the past. It's a big debating point because a lot of people, particularly younger people, use devices, and I'm sure everybody is aware of contractors and people who service cars and such like just do everything on their devices now. And there are many ways that you can incorporate things like videos and other helpful information for easier use through devices. But you're right in saying that some people still want a physical book that they can pick up and take with them and read in all sorts of circumstances. So we're looking into that and how it can be done. And we'll come back to you and probably actually ask for your advice on how we can do this as we go forward with the online publications as well. We do feel it's important to get material online now because we do get very good requests for that very seriously, and it's an expectation nowadays, but some people still do want paper copies. So we'll welcome your advice in due course.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, got to correct that one. Peter Harrison, hands up. Then Kate Flabel, then Beverly.
Sorry, you got me now?
Yeah, got you.
Okay, sorry, Peter Harrison, answer. Yeah, again, I want to say thank you very much to this work group for the work they've done. To see some of these documents online will be very useful, especially for those of us who are not based in the UK. I just want to cover a couple of things on the international side. I know you've got a couple of members from NAG, which is fantastic. But here in Australia and New Zealand, we've had an advisory committee in our branch, association, sorry, which has central contact for people to contact in for the last, 6 or so years now. Other countries may want to do something similar if they haven't already, as this will help to deal with some of the more local issues that we come across, whereas things like VAT don't apply to us, obviously. As a point of interest, next year's ANZAC Festival is planning to hold a bell maintenance, what we call classroom session, which we're hoping to record. We're happy to share the recording, and we're happy to see what other things will be online, because it'll be a very easy way to distribute to other people around the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter.
Can I comment back on that, Simon,
yeah, sure.
please?
Yeah.
Points well made, Peter, and increasingly we are trying to stop ourselves from just taking a UK perspective in the publications and documentation. And within the group of specialists that we have in the work group are reps from other countries, only as far as field from me as a few miles over in Wales, Scotland, Southern Ireland, and overseas in ANZAB, the US. I'm looking for someone perhaps in France even, who can act as a point of contact, perhaps review our documents and give us advice when we have inquiries from those sort of areas. And so we do get a broader perspective in some of the documentation we write. Clearly, if we're writing on, say, finance, yes, that is local to us here in England, and perhaps extending a bit through Wales and Scotland and the like. And we couldn't incorporate details on the equivalent of tax regimes and such like in every country in the world, and for the relevance of those locally. And all we can do is just refer that to the local experts if inquiries come to us, or for your experts in those sort of disciplines. But again, this is where the networks may be useful, because the networks may be able to link up people who've got finance knowledge in different parts of the world, if that becomes relevant, for example. So a good point. Do raise a red flag if we overlook that sort of issue in some of the documents and material. I mean, one of the merits of online material is we can update it and change it much
Yeah.
more readily than a printed document if we do commit errors or want to change something when legal matters change or other changes arise.
Thank you. There's 2 more hands up in order. It's Kate Flavel next, then Beverly Furness. Kate.
Kate Flavel, Surrey Association. Thank you. Here in the Surrey Association, we bought a job lot of the Belfry Maintenance book when it was published and offered it out to all our towers for anybody who wanted it, which quite a lot of them did. So I think we distributed books to about, I think it was more than 50% of the towers in our association. And I know that books can sit in a bookshelf in a tower and nobody ever look at them, but I think they're more accessible then than online stuff, which you've actually got to go out looking for. People do like books and they do use them, and look how the Dove books are selling, even though everybody knows that Dove Online is much more up-to-date and accurate than the book, but we still like books. And I would urge consideration of publication of paper books on these useful topics, even if they have to be updated on a regular basis. That's just a reason to buy the latest copy.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Interestingly, when I offered the prizes for the call change competition as being any book from the Central Council bookshop, the Manual of Belfry Maintenance was the top pick. A number of winners selected that. So finally, I think then is Beverly Furness.
Unfortunately, Beverly is not using the correct version of the Zoom client.
Beverly, we can't hear you. If we get you later, we'll take the question, or if you could put the question in chat, we'll deal with it that way. Sorry, we cannot get you. In that case, we have to move on. TNT work group.
Thank you, Simon.
John.
Thank you, Simon. I'm Graham John, work group leader and representative for the Oxford Diocesan Guild. Can I have the first slide, please, Colin? So the work group's made a number of areas of significant progress over the last year. These continue to build the work of building the method and composition collections, completing the transfer of Dove to its new platform and enhancing its scope, updating the method framework to embrace online ringing, and to form a new team to investigate how the council can help protect the digital services, software and data created by ringers, and also providing the IT services for the council. I think most of this is covered in the report, so I won't go into any more detail on those. However, I do have 2 updates for today. So Colin, if you could give me the next slide. Firstly, we have held a consultation on the version 2 of the framework for method ringing, and the responses to that have now been analysed. Those comments are now being published on the framework website. I don't think they're quite complete, but they're starting to be populated there. As there are a number of comments from individuals against one of the proposals, which was to amend the method naming minimum requirement from just an extent for the lower stages to a court appeal. This seemed to not be popular amongst the respondents, so we're going to drop that particular proposal. In most other areas, there's little change to what was proposed, other than sort of small corrections and improvements. As with the previous version, the new version will come into effect 3 months after executive approval. So once we've completed updating the framework, it will be submitted for the executive to approve it, and then it will come into effect 3 months later. it's probably just worth stressing the sort of importance of it, given the last year and the very many sort of thousands of performances that have been rung in ways that haven't involved real bells, that this was an important aspect for the framework of method ringing to actually be able to encompass that and actually look at how performances could be reported in a consistent way and analysed in the future. So coming on to the second point, the next slide, thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention, as has been referenced a couple of times so far in terms of a need for this, and I think it's important to say that while many ringers have been using Facebook forums to raise questions and discuss ringing topics for some years, there are many others that don't like many aspects of the mainstream social media, such as its invasion of privacy, tracking of activity, and targeted advertising. It can also be very difficult to find information that you remember seeing on Facebook, but have great difficulty finding in the future. On the other hand, the sort of older forums, the email subscription lists, such as Ringing Theory, Change Ringers, and Ringing Chat, are constrained by plain text conversations, poor threading of topics, and ability to search archives. So we felt there was a need for another way to provide this level of communication. So we are launching what we've called Ringing Forums, and this is now set up, and actually you can, if you go onto that website, you can actually register to be a contributor to it. But we haven't yet publicized it. So this is going to be the next step, is to go through an exercise of communicating the availability of these ringing forums. Using this, we can establish separate forums for distinct ringing topics on request, encourage experts to monitor relevant forums and answer questions raised, and provide public or private forums as needed for special interest groups or particular projects. A single login will allow ringers to comment on the forums, and actually any of the public forums can be browsed without logging in at all. So I think this was mentioned by Alison in particular, that a lot of the areas of maintenance in ringing and the sort of specialist groups is a good opportunity for people to discuss topics of specialist interest, and we hope that this new forum will provide that facility. Next slide, please, Colin. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's been involved with the activities of the Technical and Taxonomy Work Group over the last year. Some have committed many hundreds of hours of effort to create and maintain the services that many of you rely on, and I'd especially like to thank them on behalf of the ringing exercise. If you have a passion for data or software and would like to contribute, please contact me. And at this point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, questions for Graham. Tim Pett, first hand up.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. It's Tim Pett, Oxford Diocesan Guild. Graham has mentioned, and it was also mentioned in the workgroup report, about the transfer of the Dove database to the new online, the new system. I don't think we should let this go by without giving thanks to John Baldwin for the tremendous amount of work that he's done. First of all, in setting up the digital online version of the database and then maintaining it over very many years. Not quite sure how long that is, but I know that it has involved a tremendous amount of work, and it has been of benefit to very, very many ringers, particularly those who go around to different towers. So if it is appropriate, I would like to propose a formal vote of thanks to John for setting up the Dove database online in the first case, and for all the work that he's done in making it available and maintaining it over many years. Thank you.
Yes, I think we'll, if we could formally record that, Mary, I think that's a very, very good thing to do. Jane Wilkinson, hand up.
Can I say a big thank you and support to what Tim said? I well remember when we put forward from the Redundant Bells Committee, which has done quite a lot of work that has gone unnoticed by history, at Llandudno, that John eventually, when it was turned down by the council was asked to adopt his work on the Dove database and proceedings to make the index much more comprehensive, said, well, this is a good thing because I can now do it my way and get on with it. He's produced a brilliant bit of work. It's all of us climbing on the shoulders of eagles. And I think we should acknowledge very much that his work on the Dove database and all that went to it and for it, as Tim has said, is something very major for the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, can you make sure the climbing on the shoulders of eagles is some of the words you use? Any other questions for Graham before we move on? No, thank you, Graham. In that case, we move on to Tim Hine and the VNL work group.
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I audible?
Yep. Let's keep pressing on. Thank you.
Right. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see what we do. And this is a cut down version of our mission. But in there, you will see notions such as we are here helping people do more with what they have. Notice that means telling them things that might be possible rather than telling people what to do. And we assume that people will create things for themselves. There is a bit of a tension between that and saying, here's a template that 53 other people have found very helpful. And one of our work group members calls this pinching with pride. And I would endorse that as well. But the main thing is, if you think it's yours, you'll go with it. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, please. And you can see here on the same pattern as the other leaders, we're looking at what we've done, particularly the highlights and the recovery movement. So around 18 of us became recovery champions. And that's important because it gives us very close links then to needs and possibilities in the exercise. What needs doing next? What would people appreciate? What would they like to have for themselves that somebody else might find good? So what we abbreviate here, R&R here means recruitment and retention, which has been a big theme for us since last year. And you'll remember we had the conference in March and we see a big overlap. If I call this an overlap, you've got that bit and the leadership and recovery. They seem to have a very common skill set. So the team wrote some material for the online toolkit or toolbox. And we had some presentations for the recovery convention, including the all-important social event, which some of us will remember was delicious. That was Hayley Young's beer tasting. And circumstances have kept everybody working online. So the main bits we took forward around recruitment and retention, we actually appeared on the NAGAM, that's the North American Guild. They had a spot for us on recruitment and retention. And more broadly, the educational support, such as ringing world articles, education column, and so on. Can we jump on, please?
Yeah, just one more minute.
Right. Leadership. So there's activity to promote that. There will be a residential course next year. We're in partnership with ART, looking at recruitment and retention workshops. expecting different themes to come out. Don't know quite how this will emerge, can't predict. And much of this work will be collaborative. So can we jump on again? And how can you be involved? Wouldn't mind a secretary on this group. We would very much like to see younger ringers because it will balance things up. This is very much about people skills rather than detailed theory and ringing knowledge. Don't think, oh, because I haven't rung a peal and I can't ring double Norwich, I can't join this work group. In fact, as an example, we had a Ringing Remembers recruit came and joined the work group last year. It was very helpful to have their perspective. So it is very much about people skills. Do contact us. I'm not going to go into detail here. If you have ideas, do contact us. The email is there and we're on the web. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim? Simon Edwards.
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Simon Edwards from the GMB. Tim, that sounds interesting. Younger ringers, I don't know whereabouts I fall in that bracket these days, but potentially could be interested. What sort of things would you be looking for in this?
The main push this year we see is around attracting people into the exercise. So if you look at the themes in the overarching strategy document, number one is identifying a source of people who have the potential to become good ringers and to lead the exercise forward. Now, some of that is about inspiring people, some of it is about teaching them, and some of it is about just getting them in there and keeping them happy, social stuff. So any help you can give us on any of that would be very warmly welcome.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Tim? Otherwise, we'll move on. No. Okay, thank you. Move on to the next two. I think the next two are going to be slightly shorter. Claw back some time. Colin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colin Newman, Ancient Society of Colleges and Youth Group Team Lead. I remember last year saying that I didn't think we were going to achieve very much for this group during the lockdown due to COVID, and that has been true. A lot of the group's work is around engagement with other organisations, and they are currently or have been busy dealing with their own problems. However, it would be fair to say that we have made some good progress in terms of engaging with various organisations. I think one of the key items of news is with the guide movement. So there's been work gone on to revamp and remodernise the Bluebells Challenge, which was originally launched in 2012. That will be relaunched later this year within the guides, and hopefully that will encourage guides to take up bell ringing or get involved in bell ringing as part of the guiding movement. Scouts, unfortunately, we had a little bit of a setback because we missed the badge cycle for Scouts, but we are still doing a lot of work on the 5 stages of badges, working from an initial visit to the tower right up until becoming more competent in ringing, so they can earn 5 badges in the course of that. We've produced a sliding scale now, which is in the final stages of sign-off once we've completed the call change option, which is currently under development. So that will give guidelines to towers and tower captains on how to deal with Duke of Edinburgh engagements. We have established contact with Boys and Girls Brigade, Young Farmers and other youth organisations. It would be fair to say that we haven't engaged with them in terms of how we can work with them yet. As I said at the beginning, they are still working on their own issues. There's 3 items on schools in there. There's been some work gone on to create various lesson plans based on the national curriculum, or designed to be part of the national curriculum. They were trialled in a couple of schools in Worcester, thanks to the engagement of Mark Regan there. We observed lessons being delivered by non-ringing teachers in a couple of subjects, which was excellent. So work will continue in that space with a view to being able to roll that out nationally. And we're also working on non-curriculum lesson plans so that they can be delivered in terms of enrichment activities, etc., within schools. We've starting to produce all of the information required on how to engage with local youth organisations. That will all be published ultimately on the Central Council website. There will be a separate section on there regarding youth engagement, and all of the useful artefacts that are being created will be professionalised and publicised. Okay, I'm going to move on. I can tell myself to move on to the next slide. So there we go. So next steps, I think I've probably covered most of it whilst talking to the previous slide anyway. We're going to complete the launch of the Bluebells Challenge for the guides and finish working with the Scouts on the badge options. Publishing of the how-to advice for engaging with youth groups. Continue to develop and perfect the lesson plans for schools. That is a very big piece of work because we want to cover as many subjects as possible in there and make that as professional as possible so that it can be picked up by non-ringing teachers, as I say. Formalising the school engagement strategy. That is a slightly separate piece of work to developing the lesson plans. We need a way to engage nationally with the schools. Thankfully, we do have several people on the work group who are teachers and are involved in education, which is good. Publication of the DOV materials that have been produced and are being signed off. Then we need to do some publicity, some sort of cascade to help people understand where all of the artifacts are that will help them. And we also need to define a review process. I think I said last year, I saw this work group as probably being a short-term work group. Once it's delivered what it needs to, it is done. But there does need to be a regular review process of the published documents to ensure that they don't go stale. We can't just deliver them and dump them and leave them. So we need to look at that. And that is it. I think I've rattled through that in 3 minutes.
Awesome, Colin. Any questions for Colin, please? Do you need warm leads to deliver these lesson plans, and what key stages are they targeted at?
Right. So we're aiming at specific years. So the years that we're looking at are year 5 and potentially 6, and then year 8 and 9.
Okay.
At the moment.
Okay. Any other questions for Colin? No, Colin, you got off lightly. Okay, very comprehensive, thank you. Penultimate, universities and colleges. I think this will be quite quick. Ian Ralston.
I hope I'm now unmuted.
Got you.
Got you, thank you. Ian Ralston, Society of Royal Cumberland Youths and University and College Work Group Lead. So, as I said in my report, for reasons that I think are fairly well understood, this has been a quiet year, and it's unfortunate it's the first year for this work group, given the backdrop to working in universities. However, practices and summer tours have now kicked off again, so things are getting back to normal, and most universities will be operating on the basis of having most activity done in person, as it were, from the autumn onwards. So hopefully this will carry over into ringing as well. Now, there are a number of challenges that we face. In June, discussions with Leslie Belcher, she mooted the idea of having regional freshers festivals to help initiate recovery, which I think would be an excellent idea, but unfortunately, the more we thought about it, the lead time involved meant that it was going to be very difficult to do anything for this September. However, I think there will be a need for something like this next year, and therefore this idea is certainly not dead and something we'll be looking to do next autumn. Jackie Brown, who created the universityringing.org website, has been updating the contact list there. So she's been in touch with a number of associations, and thankfully there have been very few sort of nil responses. So that is up to date, and I'll say more about that in just a moment. And the other thing that we've been doing over the summer is to promote the idea of becoming a registered small society. I need to correct a statement, an inaccurate statement in my report, that I inferred that the Southampton University Guild had applied for registration, whereas I believe that is actually in process, but they were certainly enthusiastic about doing that. Interestingly, we also received some feedback from some university societies that felt perhaps little need to become registered with the CC, but because they had very good contact with their local territorial association, which again, I think is a very positive. Okay, next slide, please. So looking to the coming academic year, we will have a stand at the National Youth Contest at Worcester next Saturday. And also we're going to be looking to work with the Young Change Ringers Association as really that activity gets off the ground. I think it's going to be very important in terms of addressing this this potential risk of losing people between school and university. So we'll be promoting our activities at the youth context next weekend. The biggest thing is that in terms of recovery of university ringing activity, we need data. As I say, people have been in contact with Jackie to update contact details where necessary on universityringing.org. But what we really need to know about is what is happening in towns and cities up and down the country. As mentioned at the CCAGM last year, there's potential for a win-win situation by mutual support between university and college groups and local territorial societies. And this is something that we really need to think about going forward. And to that end, universityringing.org is certainly a one-stop shop in terms of information about university and college ringing activity. I should also add that in terms of recovery, although there was sadly little appetite for take-up of, say, online handbell sessions, use of e-bells, etc. during the past year, that may change in the coming year, because I think when students are probably, shall we say, 9 to 5 back in lecture rooms, then actually the appetite for doing online activity, if it helps to keep ringing activities going, may not be dead. So thanks to those who offered their services and support. We may well come back and revisit that in the coming year. Next slide, please. So what I have really is a request, and that is to CC members. Do you have a university and college group in your locality, within your association? If so, and if the group is active, that's great. If it's not, then please contact me. Or at least if you know students who are heading up to college, then please point them to the universityringing.org website. That's on the next slide. Okay. If Colin can just switch over. Yeah, that is where people need to be looking. So either contact me, point people to that website, and if there's a problem with communication, as I say, come back to me, and I will try to make sure that students heading off to university do at least know about the opportunities in their area. Okay, so just moving on, one final matter, which was the subject. It was raised in one of the president's blogs earlier this year, but I thought it's just worth flagging it to the CC membership in general. The Department of Education are establishing some new sixth form maths schools across the country. King's College London, Exeter and Liverpool are now up and running. And students attending these schools all do maths and further maths at day level. Importantly, a very important component of being a student at one of these schools is to undertake enrichment project work, either individually or in small groups, to explore applications of mathematics. And I mooted the idea with the head teachers of King's and Exeter, whether we might use the theory of change ringing as something that could be used as part of project work. And this notion was received with some enthusiasm. So I've had an informal meeting with Colin Wilde, Graham John, Mark Davies to discuss the sort of material that might be accessible to 16 to 18-year-olds with an inquiring mind, sources of material for teachers supporting such work, with a view to actually creating some projects, and we would disseminate this amongst the schools, who in turn will be working with other schools in the locality to promote ringing. Now, this is not a call for people to take up ringing, but it's to make them aware of, in particular, the use of mathematics in ringing. And these schools have modest budgets to buy equipment when they're established, certainly enough to say cover the purchase of a set of handbells, which could be used to augment this sort of activity. So this is very much work in progress. Naturally, it overlaps with Colin Newman's group activity too, but I think it's something that if we can pull this off, pull together some material, then when we get that material out there, it will be there for years to come. So that's certainly an ongoing initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Hand up from James Ramsbottom.
Sorry, that was done by accident.
Any other questions for Ian?
I hand it by accident. Confusing.
Chris Ridley, I think you're deputy. Do we have someone presenting for History and Archive?
Yes, I was just waiting to be unmuted.
Sorry, John Harrison is deputising for Chris. Thank you, John.
At short notice, John Harrison, Oxford Diocesan Guild. This is quite a diverse group. Could I have the next slide, please, Colin? Quick reminder of our terms of reference. Basically, we've got two. The obvious one is collecting and preserving information about ring and ringers. That's the more developed activity, but the second one we believe is just as important, although so far it's less well developed. We work in a number of subgroups, and I'll talk a little bit about each one. Next slide, Colin. Belfry Artifacts Group is currently focusing on peel boards, and they're aiming to develop a comprehensive record. It's an idea that's been around for a while. It came up under the old Biographies Committee, but we're now actually taking it forward. The example you can see here is the first fully documented peel at St Peter Mancroft, Norwich in 1715. Obviously, not all peel boards were as grand as that, but they're all part of ringing history. Some boards are recorded in local records and on tower websites. For instance, my own tower's got a full set of pictures, but many aren't, and the group's considering how to identify what exists and what information to capture about each. Obviously, you start with its existence and then go on to think about pictures and other information. They're also considering how best to make the information available. That could be some sort of standalone database, or it could be integrated or linked into Dove in terms of the tower where the boards exist, or Felsted or Bellboard, which would relate to the performance that is being recorded. When resources are available, and they're not currently, we plan to do something similar for historic photographs. The council's collection of biographies so far has been a standalone resource, but we're intending to try to integrate that with other sources of information. So we'll have a collected view of information about the lives of former ringers, which is the real theme. There are well over 11,000 published obituaries. The obituaries index will shortly be updated, and we're also working on making available the text of the original obituaries rather than just an index entry. Many of you will know that Alan Regan, the Rolls of Honour Steward, during the years from 2014 onwards, published something like 1,000 mini war biographies based on his extensive research. And that again is another research we'd like to integrate into this collection of information about the lives of ringers. Next slide, please, Colin. Digital platform is the sort of handle that we've been given for a group looking at how best to manage, structure and provide the access to all the historical information we have. Historically, this has been done in various forms, some better than others. And we're now talking about expanding it greatly, making it more comprehensive. And we're also looking at how best to make that accessible and useful to other users. There are several possibilities. Obviously, it needs to be part of the overall cccbr.org.uk domain, but it could, for example, be a standalone platform, as has been very successfully done with things like Dove. The Research and Dissemination Group is exploring how best to, sorry, reading the wrong paragraph. That was set up to work on our second objective. It was set up relatively recently, hasn't yet achieved a great deal. It may produce resources to support historical research, talks, promotional information. So basically, what is this space? The library, I'm sure many of you will be aware, is the most extensive collection about bells and ringing that exists. And of course, it needs to be preserved and made available as a resource. It's currently looked after by the library steward, Alan Glover, who, as well as looking after the library, also fields a lot of historical inquiries whenever he can. And that activity is supported by the Friends of the Library, which I'm sure many of you are members of. Next slide, please, Colin. Work on recordings is currently on hold for lack of anyone to take it forward, but we believe there's quite a lot of potential there. Now, there are several collections of ringing artifacts, notably the ringing machines, which are looked after by the stewards, although at the moment that's gone down to steward in the singular. The catalogue of Ringing Society badges has been extensively updated, following a lot of research by Alan Glover and others, and it will soon be on the website. The example you can see here is an interesting one. If you look at it, you can see that the shape of the border is based on the slow work of Stedman doubles, or Stedman anything, Stedman slow work. Other catalogues in work are one of Society membership certificates, Society logos, historical ringing prints and illuminated peel books. All of these are of both of design interest and also, of course, sources of historical information and potential promotional material. In conclusion, Chris would like to thank the work of existing work group members for their contribution and to appeal for more people to support our work. Watching the other work group presentations, this is a common theme. I think we're all aware that what we would like to do is a lot more than what we can do with our current resources. I've mentioned the need for another ringing machine steward. Bill Purvis is standing down, and we really would like another steward, somebody preferably interested in model engineering, to work alongside James Blackburn, who is the other steward. Our work on biographies is also under-resourced, significantly so, and we're trying to think about how to tackle that. In fact, there will shortly be an article in the Ringing World looking at alternative ways of doing that. And as I mentioned earlier, we don't have anyone to take forward the work on recordings. So to end with an appeal, if you're interested in any aspect of our work, and history is a pretty broad area, and ringing has lots of it, or if you've got particular skills to offer, then please contact Chris. Contact details for all the different areas of our work are in the meeting booklet and on the website. And I'll try to answer any questions now, but if I can't, then please contact Chris after the meeting.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions for John, and he'll do his best? No, there aren't. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes all the work group reports. Thank you to all. We don't vote on these; we've accepted them, but I think we all owe a great debt of gratitude to work group leaders and all the members of work groups. A lot of people in these work groups doing a lot of work. A comment from Simon Dixon, which may be historical and archival, or just general.
It's just a general comment. For those of us who will have to craft reports for our association from this meeting, will the updated PowerPoint slides be available to help us with the updates?
Yeah, that's easily done. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I had said we'd take the comfort break after the next item, but the next item could be about 15 minutes, and I promised 12:30, which some people may have relied on. So we'll take the comfort break now and try and get back to restart at 12:30. Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 12:30. Welcome back. Simon Dixon still got a hand up. Is your hand still, or you still want to ask a question, or is that left over? We'll assume it's left over. Okay, thank you. If we can move on to first slide then. Forward Plan 2021, which I'm pleased to present. First bullet, fortunately, that's going to be quite brief. We pretty much got to the end of giving COVID guidance, thank goodness. There's probably still a little bit to come from non-England, but colleagues in Wales, Scotland and Ireland keep abreast of local regulation, and I update the website as appropriate. Ringers are still interested in ventilation and CO2 monitoring though. I'm keeping active a section of the COVID guidance website specifically on that topic. Information on practical implementation of ventilation's improvement schemes that others can learn from are very welcome. I've put a couple of John Harrison's papers gone up there, a couple of other things, and particularly if they set a precedent for altering buildings, because that's going to be quite important as we have discussions with DACs or with listed conservation officers about altering buildings for ventilation. So have a look at that. That's on the website. In terms of ringing recovery, we continue to work with ART on recovery champion meetings, but that's very much focused now, as the meeting we had yesterday was on potential recruitment campaign coordination. That was one thing that came through from the recovery champion meetings, was that the ringing population does want a coordinated campaign, but not yet. Not until maybe the spring. So a big part of our focus over the next 6 months will be working on that, and ideas are going to be welcome. Probably need a bigger team to be working on it, but the steering group of the recovery champions is a very good place to start. And as I said, we were discussing it yesterday. Just before COVID hit us, the Churches Conservation Trust were about to launch a campaign of their own, with very, very heavy social media content on ringing recruitment. They had a very, very, very good video that they had produced to assist with that. They're going to launch that next year. That's an extra. We want to be doing something ourselves as well. And moving on. A lot of what the executive does is guided by the strategic priorities. That was published January last year. It's time it was reviewed. I'm going to have a look at it again over the next month just republish it. I don't think it needs a lot of change, but the world has changed, and the profile of ringing might have changed somewhat in the last 18 months. So it's worth going back and checking that it's still up to date and that we're still focused in the right area. We did make a lot of progress during the pandemic, as I think the work group reports and updates have shown, particularly on the last of the strategic priorities, which is that the church values our contribution. But most of the strategic priority work is done in work groups, even if it gets started off by me or the other members of the executive. But there are still some major projects, longer term projects that are being run by me with specific teams. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those. The first one of those there is a National Heritage Lottery Fund bid, which is all around getting bells into schools and youth groups. I'm working on that with Roger Booth, with a little bit of assistance from Leslie Belcher, but principally Roger, who's setting aside a lot of time to write this bid document, which is an awful lot of pages. This is in partnership, partly with the Handbell Ringers of Great Britain, which is an interesting alliance, but they've already have a programme of getting bells into schools on which we can piggyback, and they have expertise and channels in. So working with the HLGB, we're also working with the Churches Conservation Trust, who are very keen on promoting ringing to young people and persuading young people to engage with heritage. That's their angle on it. They're also interesting because they have never failed with a heritage lottery funding bid, and they've done a number. So they add a lot of credibility. They've got processes in place that look impressive to the HLF. So we're working with them, and they've gone from just being a consultee to being really part of the team. and partly working with art as well. That bid, I will circulate when the next draft is done. I will make it available for people to look at. It's quite sizable. It's probably going to be over £250,000. It could be heading up to 300,000. But the feedback so far from the HLF monitor saying it says it's all looking really good. So we'll press ahead. But as I said, I'll share that when we've got a draft that is ready for review. What it's probably going to need is because it's a long-term plan. This is not a wham bang recruit a load of people next year plan. This is an HLF bid around a 5-year program. So in the first year, it's going to need probably half a dozen societies to pilot what we're planning to do, with strong links of engaging with young ringers and into schools. But when we get to the next draft, I'll share that with you. On the next slide, I'll talk about the mobile belfry 2.0, which was flagged as responding to strategic priority 1 of investigating a truly mobile belfry that can be taken around schools, music festivals, etc., and set up quickly. This is a project which I'm working again, Roger Booth, with his different hat on. He's owner of the Chimes ring. Phil Gay, who's from the Lichfield Diocesan Mobile Belfry, which is obviously an early exponent of this, and Mike Semken, and originally Andrew Michael Wilby from Taylor's. We've got to the point now where we've got a design for this, which excellently meets the brief. To set it up in half an hour, with real bells that ring normally, and a total weight, including the trailer, of under 1,800 kilograms. This is a key point because it needs to be towable by a certain type of vehicle rather than everyone needing a truck. It's been value engineered as much as possible, but after the Loughborough Bell Foundry Trust offering to fund the actual bells, we still need about 40 to 50k of capital funding. But a website, I wrote content for a website last week. A website on this particular project is going to appear next week. It's got to, because I promised it in my blog. Best way to get things done. So you'll see, and hopefully, and we will be looking at different ways of funding it. One of which may be associations who might want to use it, who may see the value of it. It's intended to be a repeatable design. The business plan envisages that there's going to be a number of these positioned around the country. And the aforementioned HLF bid uses mobile belfries quite heavily. Not only this new one, but the existing Chambra and the Lichfield, and also there are 20 to 30 mini rings around the country, which hopefully can be used potentially more than they are, because they're quite powerful. Moving on. I think the cast of 1,000 comes next. This was an item in strategic priority 2 of trying to make sure that ringers don't meet a barrier to their own progress. This is at the higher end of the sort of ringer scale, the sort of red zone, as it was once called. And this is to be organising a surprise major level practices in addition to what associations are able to do themselves. We did launch this in Ringing Room. We thought we might as well, and it worked extremely well. Stephanie Warboys was coordinating it, and throughout the lockdown period, we had up to 4 surprise major practices, properly organised, properly run, 2-hour practices with specific people being helped and learning stuff, and it worked really, really well throughout the period. We're not doing it now because I think people have had enough. But in terms of launching that's a plan for next year. We can't really do it. People are clearly not up for going to practices with people they don't really know yet. So we're going to have to wait. But it's on the list of things to try and crack next year. Don't think it's going to be that easy, but we're going to try and crack it. Ringing forms, I'm not going to say any more about because that's been well covered by others. In terms of the executive's role, it's really just going to be to promote its use and try and make it a success. The next slide covers call change competition. This is addressing strategic priority 5, that method ringing is not the only measure of success. ART have been working hard on this. They're launching a specific call change program. Also looking at changing the way in which levels are described within the Learning the Ropes scheme, so that not going beyond call changes doesn't look like failure. We ran a Southwest, I shouldn't just say Devon, but it's we know what we mean, a call change competition on Ringing Room, particularly for bands not used to it, and it was very successful, a lovely event. And we're looking for a date now in the 2022 call change community calendar to have more of a national event. My hope is that this will be a part of the national program of striking competitions, and it's not meant to be for mercenary bands and cobbled together. This is meant to be individual towers who see high quality call change ringing as a means in itself. That will definitely need a team to help. I'm looking. Ian Avery is from Devon is trying to help find us a date, but after that it's going to need a little bit of a team. So if you're interested in that, I'll be very pleased to hear from you. The next item, I think, is what we call the National Ringing Centre. This is the redevelopment of the old Black Lion in Northampton, building owned by the Church Conservation Trust next to their church, which is St Peter's. And this development, which is in planning now, is incorporating a barn in the outside area of the pub, which is going to be what we hope will be a showcase ringing centre for ringing training. That's gone into the planning application. There will be a project website specifically for this shortly. I'm not, and work is happening to the St Peter's Bells next door. Representatives of the Peterborough Diocesan Guild are closely involved in this project. The CCT, as I said, it's in planning. They're starting to have discussions with their pub operator and pressing us for a memorandum of understanding to demonstrate our commitment to it, and we are committed to it. I'm pulling back slightly from calling it the National Ringing Centre now, because the idea of the National Ringing Centre was also to be able to have meeting space and possibly some hot desks and have all our meetings there. And in the early draft of the plans, there was a room that was potentially going to hold 70 or 80 people as part of the development, but now, because they need to make it work financially, they're putting some letting bedrooms in instead. So the meeting room is a bit smaller. So although this can be a fantastic place and a great ringing centre, I'm not promising the name national on it yet, because I wouldn't want to overpromise and underdeliver in terms of facilities there. But it should be absolutely excellent. It's not going to be quick. When it comes out of planning, there's about a year's worth of construction works. The expectation of this will be it'll be up and running in spring 2023. Next item, I think that's all the projects. That, just in terms of organisation, in last year's forward plan, I talked about all sorts of new work groups. Well, we're happy with where we are at in terms of work groups. That's settled down nicely. Not proposing any more. The support group, that still needs, we've got on our support group. If you want to see the structure, there is now on the website under About the Council an organogram that are produced, which shows the structure of the work groups and also the structure of the support group and the stewards. Sometimes it is quite difficult to get one's head around where everything is. So if you look at the website, it's on there now. But one of the things in the support group is events management. We advertised for this, I know, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, and we nearly had it cracked. But the person who was going to do it then had a change of circumstances, so can't. So we're still a little bit, or to say we're under-resourced is an understatement, because at the moment it's David Cacoldi, and he could really do with some help. So if you're interested, we don't want this to sound too enormous. We don't want to put people off, because this is, but any help from people who are interested in organising events, like the council meeting next year, like call change competition, like regional courses, be very, very welcome. And also more help on technical stroke web expertise. We've now got 3, in addition to Doug Davis, who's the webmaster, we've got web editor. We've got 3 people now helping with web stuff, which is helping us to move forward a little bit of a backlog of improvements to the website, but also do things like this microsite for Mobile Belfry, which is being done by a completely new person. And behind the scenes, we've got a group with one of the web editors doing processing changes to the website. They're just finishing a project to do with making the searching better. But there are more things we can be done, and the more people we have with expertise in that area, the more we will get done. So that's good. We are cognizant of really needing to provide more information to you guys, to members. I think the updating of reports, etc., on the website, and the updating of what all the work groups are doing, I think is possibly not good enough. We'll try and improve that. Thoughts welcome. But finally, the reducing, actually there might be something after this, but reducing the size of the council. Hopefully everybody saw that we've published more of the responses, well, all of the responses to the consultation events on the website this week. So you'll see, and that goes through all the way to the last one, the one that was done quite quickly at the end, and it's all up there. And so, I mean, the question was asked by someone just before this meeting: why if there was strong support for direct membership organisation, for instance, is it not being brought forward? And it's really because there just wasn't, and there was strong support for it, but there was also people who thought what we've got now is fine, and there was just not a clear enough option. There's not a clear enough option that if we came up with a direct membership organisation and put it to the vote, it would get carried. No clear options at all. Either the rules or the standing orders, forgive me for not knowing which, require us to consider this every 3 years. So it will come around again. But for the moment, direct membership organisation is not on the table, nor is rebranding the council. No one thought that was a particular problem, especially as it went hand in hand with direct membership. So we leave that. The final one was the one about reducing the size of the council, and this was the one that was subject to the sort of flash consultation in the run-up to this meeting. And that again showed that on balance, well, more than on balance, respondents think that the council should be smaller, but no clear way of doing it, certainly not a clear enough way of doing it that could be put to this meeting. And it was quite clear that any proposal needs to also consider the whole question of affiliation fees, and that they should be considered together. Now, we are committed to taking that forward for the next meeting, unless anybody proposes that we don't. We will welcome. I think there's almost certainly an option that we can consider. There are 2 or 3 options, but we could home in on the best one. So we will work on that unless anyone thinks that other things are more important. I just noted from my notes one thing I missed out. One thing that came out of the consultations about direct membership was from the Young Ringers, and the Young Ringers. There was a seed of an idea that a national or international organisation for Young Ringers would work. And a small team was initially put together, but then basically left to their own devices with support from Colin Newman and from me. And next Saturday at the Ringing World National Youth Contest, the Young Change Ringers Association is going to be launched as a national, so international organisation for young ringers under 30. With very much centered on a belief that they look after each other, a mentoring scheme, a way of connecting them together, unconstrained by geography and their individual group, but respecting their individual groups. But that stemmed from those concepts, and who knows where that might lead. But we will do our best to make sure and help them make a success of it. I think moving on, I think one more slide, which is just on to do with new blood. 2022 is sadly Mary Bowen's last meeting. Sadly for us, perhaps not sadly for Mary or Fred, but we are going to be looking forward to replacing our secretary after the next meeting. Without too much detail, we're potentially looking for another trustee. So having seen what the trustees do, if you have people in mind or you're interested yourself, we're potentially looking for another trustee or two. And Tim Hine, long-suffering Tim, had told me about 18 months ago that he needed to step down, and we haven't let him. But Tim Hine would welcome a replacement or support in the V&L work group. So that's the forward plan. We've got quite a bit to do, but comments are welcome. Can't believe there aren't any. Okay, people are thinking. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, we've got a couple of hands gone up. First hand up was Kate Flavel.
Kate Flavel, Surrey Association. I just really wanted to just comment very briefly on the idea of reducing the size of the council, and I would urge you to press on with that. I think whilst not all council members, current council members might necessarily support it, and obviously it depends on exactly what the replacement scheme is that is come up with. I think we have to bear in mind what it looks like from the outside and the criticism of the council from ringers who are not council members, and even from some council members, that they see this huge group, and we've seen all these pleas going out for people to step up and help with stuff that's going on that we all think is important, and yet no one's prepared to step forward and do it. And that just looks bad all the way round. And I think if we could have a smaller council where everybody's got their sleeves rolled up and they're doing something, and they're all hauling in their ringing friends from outside the council to help on specific projects, as is happening at the moment all over the place as well, you know, it would just look a lot better. And I think the perception from outside is quite important to bear in mind, rather than just what we, the council, think we want. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. It's good point. Linda Garton.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
It was really just a very quick comment. The last couple of items on the agenda have really highlighted how much work's been going on, and actually there's some really exciting developments in place to look forward to. And I just really wanted to say a big thank you to you, Simon, to the executive, the work group leaders, and everybody that's driving all of this, because I think it's quite an exciting time with lots of things happening that I think will be of great benefit to ringing.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Alan Nunley.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Alan Nunley, North American Guild. I just wanted to comment on one of the differences between the council and its work and the members of the work group and their works, because there is overlap. There is some overlap there, but one of the things I was able to join in and work on work groups. I've never been a member of the council. I'm now an ex officio member for the Effie Dukes Fund, but I do want to comment that there are people that are willing to do work. They may or may not be elected members of the Central Council. They may be other people. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a need for work. There's more and more work being done by the council and by the work groups, and the work groups have been growing. And I heard many calls out today for more help. The people who respond to that may or may not be on the Central Council. So I don't know how that would exactly, I don't know that the size of the Central Council is related to the size of the work groups. And so I would like to make sure that that's understood, that it's two somewhat different groups.
Yeah, no, absolutely right, Alan. They're not quite connected. John Baldwin, next hand up. Not got you yet, John. Okay, we've got you.
I would like to say on behalf of the council a big thank you to Mary for her hard work behind the scenes. She's managed to keep things going very well indeed. Thank you, Mary, very much.
I think everyone will echo that. Yeah, big celebration next year.
Yes, you're
Mary's
stuck
about
with
to
me
speak.
for one more year.
One more year, yeah. Okay, are there any other comments? Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, no, it's John. Oh, that might be, no, that was an error. Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you all for your support. Some more procedural items now. Item 13 is the financial update for 2021 and outline general fund budget for 2022, which enables me to hand over to Fergus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Updates since June, since I wrote the report. The executive on 25th of July approved a loan to the New Young Ringers Change Ringing Association of £3,000, and they're going to be using the Central Council's number 2 bank account in order that they can establish a track record before setting up their own bank account, which may well take a couple of years or so to do. So this will appear as a separate item within next year's accounts. In general, there's been a very slow take-up of the small societies. We have one application currently. And the increased expenditure shown under the exec was due to safeguarding legal advice and documentation for the Social Care Institute for Excellence. And we thank Clive Whitaker, yes, who's done an awful lot of work to keep this cost very much reduced. That's really all to say about the update for June. So going on to next year, basically it was an outline as I understood it in June. Given that there's almost certainly to be a real live meeting next year rather than a virtual one, we expect the ancillary activities to break even, and the meeting costs should be in line with those of previous years. Additionally, there are various other projects which may or may not come to fruition next year, and they could possibly require a level of financial support. That is it. Okay.
Thank you, Fergus. I'll just come back on one of the points before anyone else asks it, because I'm sure, and that's just on small societies. It is early days with many of the small ringing societies, which we hope will apply for membership, basically haven't done any ringing for the last 18 months. So becoming a smaller society, I think, hasn't been on anyone's agenda. That's certainly the case of the universities that we've talked to. There are half a dozen applications in progress or promised, and we've got a small societies coordinator who is starting to proactively contact those over the next 6 months or so. The first application we received, which was from the Derby City Centre Ringers, has not been concluded yet by the executive. It was discussed at length at the last trustees meeting and deferred to allow some more discussions to be had with them. We received strong representations that single tower bands was not what the small societies motion was all about, and despite the title of the applicant, it does appear to be a single tower band. So that one is still with the executive pending some further inquiries. Any other questions for Fergus?
Mr. President, there's no hand up, but in
the
Q&A.
No, we've got Paul Flavel. Hand up from Paul Flavel.
Okay.
Paul?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, it's Paul Flavel, Surrey Association. Does the Central Council have a reserves policy? In other words, have you got a amount of funds set aside for a rainy day? In other words, if there's no income, Art have got a similar reserves policy. Okay.
Yeah. I'm fairly sure there is. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't like to say what it is,
but I do believe it is mentioned in the financial report within the meeting notes.
Yeah, I think there is as well. Mary, you were about to say something.
Yes, I was about to say that, sorry.
Yeah.
It's listed in the trustees report under section 5. And I think also in the notes to the accounts.
And a note from Carolyn Stockman, who says that it is reviewed by her annually.
Okay, so the answer is yes. Yeah. Hand up from Steph Pendlebury. Yeah.
Hi everyone, Steph, Sussex County Association. Question from one of my constituents. Why was the Young Ringers loan for the new Young Ringers organisation a loan rather than a grant?
We offered a grant, and they said they only wanted a loan because they wanted to prove they could pay it back.
Okay, excellent.
They've basically got a business plan. But they have decided they are charging their members £15 subscription, but they bought a load of badges and stuff up front, and they wanted to borrow the money to cover them, and they intend to pay it back.
I shall let that person know. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? No. In that case, we move on to election of trustees, item 14. So we've received following nominations with supporting statements in Appendix A. For the office of Treasurer, nominee was Fergus Stracey, proposed by Elena Wardle and seconded by Hayley Young. For ordinary trustee, Philip Barnes, proposed Colin Newman, seconded Doug Davis, and second ordinary trustee nominee was Clyde Whitaker, proposed Phil Barnes and seconded by Nick Elps. As there are the same number of nominations as posts, I declare them all elected. Item 15 is the election of independent examiners. We have one nominee, and that's Caroline Stockman, who is existing independent examiner. And she has been proposed by Fred Bone and seconded by Doug Davis. We can have up to two. Are there any nominations from the floor? No. In that case, I declare her elected. Mary, I'm right, we don't have to vote on that? Okay, correct. Okay. Moving on then, item 16 is the governance review, standing order G1, and Philip Barnes, trustee, is going to say a few words about the governance review, I hope. Okay. Phil Barnes is coming live. Yep. Just approaching. Here he is.
Now I've been unmuted. Philip Barnes, Kent County Association and Central Council trustee. One of the features of the CRAG review was that we recommended that there should be a triennial review of governance. That was largely as a safety mechanism, given that we were changing the council and the way in which it ran fairly significantly. We have now entered the second 3-year period after the rule changes, so it is time to commence that review. I would stress that it's not really about the detail of what we do, but of how we go about it. So the kind of questions that we're going to be asking are we doing what we need in order to fulfill our charitable objects? That started off, for those of you with a good memory, with a vision for ringing and a mission statement, and that's now incorporated into our charitable objects, which appear at the beginning of the trustees' report each year that we report back to the Charity Commission. We also will need to review if we're using our charitable funds appropriately. Are we spending enough? Are we spending too little? Are we spending it on frivolous things that actually do not in any way further our charitable objects? And finally, as a general theme, it will be about whether all the parts of the council are playing their part in delivering the charitable objects of the Central Council. So that's the officers, the other executive members, the work group leads and their members, and also you, the representative members. Are you playing your part in taking things forward? So what is proposed is that we will undertake, we will get someone independent, and I'll come back to that, to review our governance, starting probably with a desktop exercise, so that whoever does the review, I would expect to be looking at the council's papers, starting with the Cragg report, starting then with our new constitution, the new rules, our AGM papers. So there's a desktop exercise for people to get a view, and that is certainly how I would undertake a governance review of an organisation if it were me, which it won't be. And then some form of questionnaire, which would include all of the above mentioned cogs within the machine, the executive members, work group leads, society reps, society leaders where they're not Central Council representatives. And I would also suggest that there should be a wider group to include some of the critics of the Central Council, of whom there are still many, usually found on Facebook, sometimes elsewhere, particularly those who have constructive criticisms rather than the Central Council has always been a pile of something useless, and that hasn't changed. And we'd then be looking at whether our charitable purposes, in other words, our vision, is still appropriate for the needs of ringing. It'll be 6 years on since they were first constructed as part of Cragg. Is the strategy consistent with the charitable purposes, and are our strategic priorities appropriate? Is the executive delivering against the strategy and the priorities? Is there evidence of adequate focus, or are we starting to drift and do too many things? All of these are aspects of good governance. And then finally, but not exclusively, is the council using its charitable funds in accordance with its objects and in accordance with best practice? And also, is there appropriate scrutiny of finance and the other things we do at the AGM? So a fairly extensive scope there, and we need to find the right person to do it. And what I'm about to describe may not exist as an individual. Ideally, you would have someone who had experience in charity or third sector governance, some form of executive leadership experience, preferably in that sector. Somebody who understood the world of ringing. I think any of us who have had the experience of the interface of ringing with other aspects of the real world, for example, dealing in safeguarding and talking to members of the safeguarding teams in churches who don't really understand what ringing is all about. It's useful to have somebody who understands what ringing is about, as well as charity experience. But I also think that such an individual needs, well, clearly not to be an officer or executive member, probably not a representative member of the council. So with those kind of thoughts in mind, I think Simon and I would be very interested in any suggestions of suitable people who may be approached. We clearly have one or two potential people who would fit that. Whether or not they would be willing to volunteer to do that piece of work on behalf of ringing and of the council is unclear. But anyone with any suggestions, please get in touch either with Simon or with me, and we will get this done, certainly in time for any changes that are recommended to be considered and brought forward for next year's annual meeting. So it's not a crazy timetable, but it is a fairly tight timetable.
Thank you, Phil. And Phil didn't mean say it out loud now necessarily. Get in touch with us privately if you have any ideas.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Any comments on that generally? No. Okay, we will be getting on with that. Thank you, Phil. We move on to item 17, which is motions, of which there are two. You'll probably be aware that we are not to spend more than 30 minutes on either of these, but they don't look too contentious, so hopefully we won't. The first one is that the council rule is to do with be amended as indicated below to allow for the possibility that only one independent examiner will be elected. And this has been proposed by Michael Church and seconded by Derek Harbottle. Are we expecting Michael to introduce this item, Mary? Yeah, Michael. Thank you. Okay, I think you're live.
Can you hear me, Mr. President?
Yes, sorry.
No, you carry on with your lunch. And may I start by thanking you for your warm comments at the beginning of this meeting, Simon, which I appreciated. In fact, it's rather strange that I should be asked to propose this motion because in connection with independent examiners, because for the first 20 years of my life on the Central Council, I was in fact one of the auditors. You've asked me to be brief, and I will, because you, like me, are missing good test cricket viewing time. The background to this is that the Central Council always had to have two auditors, now independent examiners, according to the rules. I assume on the basis that as these persons were council members, it was at that time perhaps considered not healthy to have just one. The supporting statement on the agenda paper prepared by the council's executive sets out the position. So, if it is the wish of the council to allow for the possibility that only one independent examiner will be elected, then these are the required rules and standing order amendments that must be accepted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's been seconded by Derek Harbottle. I don't think Derek is intending to say anything in seconding. No. In that case, are there any comments on any comments on this this motion? John Harrison's first hand up.
Yes, I think this is an eminently sensible motion and I'm happy to support it, but there's a small flaw in the wording. The phrase up to two includes the possibility of appointing 0 examiners, which I'm sure was not intended. And I would like to suggest that that should be replaced by wording such as at least 1.
Michael, do you want to come back on that?
Simon, that was considered at length by Mary and myself in conjunction with Caroline Stockman and Fred Bone, and what John has just suggested would in fact allow for you to have a multitude of independent examiners. That is not what is desired. It is merely to try and establish the way forward if there is only one name as the independent examiner, which is the situation about 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
Can I come back on that?
Yes.
In that case, excluding the other extreme, it could simply be replaced by 1 or 2 if the intention is that we should make it 1 or 2, which is specific.
It could. Michael, was that wording considered?
Could I defer to Mary on that?
Mary, yes.
sorry, I'm just trying to remember all the various discussions that we had on this. I can't remember precisely whether that wording was considered. I think in the end it was Michael's suggestion to use up to, i.e. to put a ceiling on it. And I think one of the comments, of course, was that, you know, it's quite possible under the current rules that, you know, we wouldn't get any nominations, and then we'd be in, we'd have a problem because we do need at least one person. I'd have to defer to Michael's experience on precise wording.
Yeah, there's also a hand up from Fred Bone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fred Bone, Essex Association. I don't think anyone with any sense is going to interpret that as meaning we're at liberty to elect none at all.
No.
Thank you.
No. No. You could also elect -1, as was pointed out by my maths teacher wife last night. Are there any other comments on that? Otherwise, I'll ask John whether he formally wants to propose an amendment to this.
Yes, I would, because although common sense says clearly naught isn't intended, the rules are supposed to be explicit and not rely on common sense assumptions. So
Okay,
I would like to propose, if someone else wants to second, that the phrase be 1 or 2, which I think is the intention that Michael has clearly articulated.
Is there a seconder for 1 or 2? Alison Williams, was your hand seconding? There's lots of hands going up now.
Alison Williams, Ladies Guild. Yes, it is the second. It actually clarifies the thing without any future misinterpretation.
Okay. Michael, would you be happy to accept that amendment that we say 1 or 2 rather than up to 2?
I think Derek Harbottle ought to be consulted before I reply to that. So,
okay. Is Derek online?
Right, Derek Harbottle,
Oh, yes.
Bristol Dyson Guild.
Yeah.
Yes, I've just unmuted. Thank you for joining me in. I was happy with the motion as it stands at the moment. I think it's clear that, you know, if you're going to elect somebody, it has to be 1 or 2. It can't be 0. There's a lot of common sense in sort of legal rules. I'm not quite certain the point John Harrison is making that the current wording is not clear. So I'm happy to support the existing motion.
Okay. In that case, we need to put the amendment. John, have you got one to come back before we put the amendment to the vote, because it's not been accepted by the proposers?
Only to say that, you know, I think we should, given that we're making a rule change, we should use the most explicit wording to say what we mean, rather than rely on the fact that it is obvious that, or anything like that.
Okay, I think it's simply, we can simply take a vote on the amendment then, which the amendment to this motion would be all as written, except that 611C would be amended to read to elect 1 or 2 independent examiners instead of up to 2. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
Yeah. Colin, would you be able to put that up as a vote?
Yes, sorry, it would also applies to the standing order change F4.1.
Yeah.
It's not.
Okay, and so yeah, so this is and consequential alterations to standing order 4.1. So we're clear that this is we're voting on an amendment that would be for what John Harrison has proposed, which is it says 1 or 2 rather than up to 2. We'll give that a good 20 seconds.
The wording that's appeared on the motion doesn't look like what you're asking us to vote on.
We put the wrong. That's the wrong one, Colin. That was the
original.
That was the original. We want a vote on the amendment created, if we could.
Right, so I'll need to update the slide and
Okay.
the poll. So give me a second.
Okay. Fred Bones' hand is still up. Is that a comment?
No, sorry, I was
okay.
trying. I was trying to get into. I shouted at Mary instead about needing to.
Don't worry.
Okay, so
Okay.
does the wording on screen now match what people are expecting?
Yes, that's the amendment. I think that does, doesn't it, John?
That is what I'm suggesting. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll vote on this as an amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Is that correct? Okay, we'll give that 20 seconds then to vote on that amendment to this motion.
Hang on.
Oh,
The poll's wrong.
What?
Council.
no, that's not correct still.
Okay.
Oh,
Somebody can give me the wording that they want.
That is sorry. Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
Okay. So do you want me to relaunch it again?
No, that's fine. I think we know.
Okay.
So if you vote yes to this, it means we can have one or two.
Okay, so we only have 85 votes before I stop
No, it hasn't.
the poll.
It's disappeared. It's disappeared, Colin.
Yeah. Would you like me to relaunch it again,
Yes,
Mr. President?
please.
Yes.
What are we now voting on?
We're voting on the amendment to this motion, which would make the motion that it's Rule 6.1c is one or two.
Yeah, we need to pass the amendment before we can pass the motion.
Yeah. How many votes are in, Colin?
113 of 152.
Okay, we'll give it a few more.
Mm. 125, 26. Okay. 128 have now voted.
Okay, we'll give 5 more seconds. Okay, can we have the result of that, please?
Okay, so in terms of numbers, there were 95 votes for, 30 against, and 5 abstentions.
Okay. So that makes the motion as per the that's now the amended motion. Are there any further comments on this motion before we put this to the vote?
Yeah, Mr. President, I will need to create another poll.
Okay. So we're now saying that there are 1 or 2 independent examiners. Jane Wilkinson. Jane Wilkinson, hand up.
I thought it would have made life a great deal easier for those of us who are not very bright, which means me, if we had just been given the little bit of changed text that we were supposed to be voting on, rather than the whole of the motion. And I might commend that to you for future reference.
Yes, noted. Yeah. Yeah. Are we nearly there, Colin?
Yep, very close.
Just going to vote on this motion.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Give it 20 seconds to vote on this motion, the motion that's on your screen.
One.
How many voted, please?
131.
Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay. Take results on that, please.
Okay.
Carried. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Thank you, Colin. It's very difficult to do that. Motion B was from, if we could have that on screen, please. It's about capturing substantive executive decisions. This has been proposed by John Harrison, seconded by Ruth Marshall. John Harrison, would you be available to present your motion?
Yes, happy to do that. I hope that the statement there is self-explanatory. Maybe as an example, there was a recent thing, I think it was last November, the executive made a decision about amounts of money which the treasurer could use for certain purposes without further consultation. It was reported to the members, very reasonable decision, properly reported. But anybody wanting to know in the future what the current state was in terms of who was allowed to do what would only have been able to do so by hunting back through all previous executive meeting reports that have been submitted. That doesn't seem a very workmanlike way of doing things. And in the interest of transparency, it would seem more sensible for the executive somewhere, the obvious place being the website, to have a list of decisions that it has made that are currently in force. And in due course, they can be updated or removed as appropriate. Then anybody, including them, could find out what the current state of play is without needing to go and do a history search. Seems a sensible, straightforward thing. I hope it's not controversial.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And we are, just to clarify, we mean decisions small d, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although of historical note, the decisions big D originated because way back in the mists of the early 20th century, the council wasn't quite sure of all the things that it decided about, and it created a definitive list.
Okay. That is seconded by Ruth Marshall. Put your hand up if you want to say anything, otherwise we'll move forward. To anyone got any comments on that? From the chair, I can say that the executive does not have a problem with this. We're open to making what we do as clear as possible, and we will find somewhere to document publicly things that are decisions that are standing, of which we can think of maybe a couple. Are there any comments on this? Otherwise, I'll put it to the vote. No hands have gone up. In that case, Colin, can you prepare the vote on this motion, please? We'll give this 15 seconds. Five more seconds. Thank you. Can we take a result on that, please? Motion is carried. 95% for. Thank you very much. We'll move on to an ultimate item, which is item 18, where I'm going to hand over to the Deputy President, David Cccbr, to comment about future meetings. Not online ones.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Simon. Hopefully it's going to be third time lucky for 2022, and we will actually have an in-person meeting at Nottingham. We discussed a brief outline of what the weekend will look like, hopefully. You will be asked to vote on a couple of matters in regard to the arrangements. Hopefully they won't be quite as argued over as the last motion was, or the last motions were. The plan is using the Clifton campus of Nottingham Trent University as the centre for the weekend. Friday afternoon, we're hoping to have some possible training sessions as outreach at local towers, and that's Friday the 2nd of September. The actual meeting will be on Saturday the 3rd of September, and it will probably follow very much the format of that tried at Goldsmiths, where first thing in the morning we'll have work group presentations for people to attend, then the Ringing World annual meeting, Central Council annual meeting, and a social event in the evening. We're also looking at what we can lay on for ringers from the area, those attending the weekend who are not representatives, and hopefully the possibility of having some form of youth event based in Nottingham during the Saturday. The Sunday, there may well be an opportunity for worship at local churches with ringing, perhaps as we did at Lancaster, where going to churches where the bells are not normally rung on a Sunday, and then the roadshow event for the rest of the day with seminar sessions and exhibitors. The one thing we would like to know is some idea of what people would like to see as social events, and also what people think would go down well for offerings for the Saturday, as I say, for those who aren't bound to come to the meeting. So there are a couple of votes that Colin has got prepared. Hopefully the pedants about those won't have any argument with the wording when they're put forward, but it's just to give us some idea of the outline we're discussing for next year. I don't know if there's anybody that's got any questions. It's very much at the outline planning stage at the moment, though.
Okay, we've got a hand up from Bruce Butler, and then a hand up from James Cccbr. Bruce first.
Bruce Butler, North American Guild. Just a quick question. In addition to having a personal meeting, which we hope will happen, will it be Zoomed? For those who can't make it.
At the moment, we have looked at that, and we'll look at it again, but the composite form of meeting may prove too difficult for us to host.
Well, let's hope the technology will be there that you can.
We'll take that away, Bruce.
Thank you.
The next is James Cccbr.
James Cccbr, Guild of Devonshire Ringers. I'm aware that I applaud the idea of holding the a young ringers thing. I was just interested what sort of format that would be, knowing that the young ringers striking competition is due to be held in Exeter next year. So presumably it won't be another striking competition.
No, we have spoken about that. I think the young ringers the Young Change Ringers Association are looking to hold regular events through the year. I'm going to be at Worcester next Saturday to discuss with various of the people there what they would like to see if they want to support coming to Nottingham next September.
Good, thank you.
That's right. They're having 3 events a year, and it will be one of them, but it's early days in terms of exactly the form. Yeah. We've got hands up from Peter Harrison, then David Bleeby.
Thank you, Mr. President. To yourself and David about the possibility of holding the meeting on Zoom and in person. I'd like to tell you that this June, that the Australian and New Zealand AGM was held in a hybrid format once we made a rule change that was possible to do so. Mr. President, I am sorry to tell you it is a slightly stressful thing to do from the chair. I speak from experience, but it is actually possible to do, but it does require having to read the room and read online. To have someone to deal with the online stuff next to you, like Colin is doing at the moment, it's very beneficial. I did that and it helped me to no ends, but I would urge the committee the council, to consider this as an option. Thank you.
We'll get in touch with you directly on that, Peter. Okay, pick your brains. Okay, and David Bleeby, also from.
Yes, Mr. President, I just would certainly support the online segment if that can be done. For those of us, I don't know whether I'll be a member next year or who's going to be a representative from ANZAB, but it would be a pity if the best people that we want to elect say they can't do it because either they haven't got time or can't afford the money to go there. And I think that would be fair if it can be possibly organised, and I would urge that to be done if it can be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've noted there are a couple of comments in chat from people with university experience who've seen hybrid events being run in recent days. So yeah, so we'll definitely look at that. Any other questions for David? Oh, were you going to put these polls up? Sorry, David.
Yes, we did. Yes, we need to.
Yeah. Poll 1. What would you prefer to see on a Saturday evening? A formal dinner, as with Goldsmiths, or a more informal event with a buffet, possibly some dance? This is not binding, but anybody can vote on this because we're all hopefully going or whatever. This is just give us a bit of guidance to the forthcoming events team. Colin, let us know when we've got sort of 140 or so.
We are there. This was a popular one.
Okay, fine. Okay, let's see the result of that. It's close, but 2/3, 1/3. So we'll take that away.
That's enough for a rule change.
Was there another poll, David?
Yes, there should be, please. And this one you can vote for more than one option. It's to do with what offering might be available on the Saturday.
Okay, thank you. Let's see that, Colin, please. And this is this click any?
Yes, you can click as many as you like.
Okay, click as many as you like. We'll give this a bit more time. Should have had a box for all of the above. How are we looking, Colin?
Yeah, we're nearly 100 votes in.
Okay, I think we'll leave it a little bit more time because this needs a little bit more thought and a little bit more dexterity. Alison Hodge, hand up while we're doing that. We can take a point from Alison, and then Richard Alton as well.
I don't know how that happened. Sorry, Simon.
Okay, that was
Not
a false
me.
alarm. Richard Alton.
Yes, I'm Richard Alton, Ancient Society Colleges. It's just a shame you're not going a month later when Goose Fair would be on. You'd have a great time there.
Fair point, but yeah. So Anthony
Can you hear me?
Yes, got you. Yeah.
in some AGMs in the past, there's been a spouses event. And, you know, even if it's simply a tour in a coach or an open top bus or something, but it gives them something to do.
Oh, yes, a non-ringing spouse event.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
got it. Okay. David will make a note of that. Okay, I think we're probably ready to take the result of that poll. Okay, there is some support for all those events, so that will be recorded, won't it? So David can have a look at it, Colin?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on then to the final item, which is any other business. Mary, I know you've got a little list.
Thank you, President. Yes, I do have a little list. I realise that normally in non-virtual circumstances, I actually report on attendance at this stage, and I managed to leave it off the agenda. But I hope members will appreciate that I can't do actually the final attendance list until afterwards when I get a list from Colin, because although we had 154, I think was the maximum I saw, it does include a few non-members, like the editor of the Ringing World and some of the support team and things like that. So I just need to discount them. I should say that, you know, people would have seen in the minutes that the attendance last year was 158, and that was actually higher than it was at Goldsmiths. It's been a long time since we've actually been over 200 people attending. So on real AOB, once again, I'd like to thank Fred for typesetting the meeting papers booklet. It takes quite a bit of time to actually get a sensible layout on this. And Fred is also very keen on accurate proofreading and spent a lot of time on that as well. And then some of the usual things that I say at this time every year. Please let us know if you as a member change your contact details, and Carol and I and Doug and everybody, we're still not psychic. Quite often we only find out that an address has changed when email's returned as undeliverable, and we can't always know who else to contact to sort it out. The information on some guild websites is distinctly out of date, and you try contacting a guild secretary or master or somebody to say, how do I contact so-and-so? And that comes back as undeliverable as well. And again, if you make sure that your guild secretary is receiving Central Council emails via the societies list. Since we changed to the Microsoft email system using Cccbr email addresses, the messages to the societies list don't actually come prefixed with societies list on them, but it is important. That's how all the messages about COVID advice went out, and other useful stuff goes out that way. So for next year, the deadline for nomination and motions in 2022 is again 6 weeks before the meeting. And as Simon said, nominations will be required for secretary, for 2 ordinary trustees who stand down in rotation, and 1 or 2 independent examiners. And as Simon said, I will not be standing again as secretary. It will have been 13 years by then. So I could just say that it's the representative members who have the privilege and responsibility of nominating and seconding candidates. So can I urge you all to consider suitable candidates, and you don't have to wait until near the deadline next July to do so. It would also be very good to have real elections. It's important that a range of ringing experience is reflected on the executive. And then I've said this every time since the new rules were adopted in 2018, that affiliation fees must be paid and membership numbers notified 6 weeks before the meeting. Strictly according to the rules, actually you shouldn't even attend if that hasn't been done, and you certainly shouldn't be able to speak or vote. And please make sure that everybody in your guild understands this, because I'd much rather receive several emails telling me about membership numbers rather than none at all. I do end up in June and July having to do a fair amount of chasing, both for fees and for membership numbers. And it's not actually really part of my job to chase on this. So I'm sure my successor after next year would appreciate it if it could become slightly more automatic that guilds do it off their own bat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I think there were some points very well made there. I think I echo the thanks to Fred. I haven't read many of these documents, but I've read the last two, and I've yet to find an error of any kind. And I do look very closely, so it really is a first-class piece of work. Thank you. So, any other business? I've got a couple of items. There's no any other business from the floor. I'll add a couple of things. One of which is to remind members of the Ringing World AGM, which is at 3 o'clock, which is a separate login. So Ringing World AGM at 3 o'clock, a nice time for lunch and a snooze maybe. And also to thank Colin Newman, the behind the scenes, pulling the technical strings. It is very difficult. Colin is well practiced at this now, but that doesn't mean to say it's not difficult. And Colin has made it look easy because he's good at it. So thank you very much, Colin. And personal thanks to Mary. Work on putting this all together is extraordinary, and you only got one more year to do it, but we do appreciate it. Thank you. If there's nothing else, then I will declare the meeting closed and see you at 3 o'clock. Thank you.